Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Sitting In Podcast. This is a conversation with athletes about real life. Today, we are sitting down with James Grady. James is an absolute legend in the fixed gear scene. He's the man behind Mission Crit and currently Formula Fixed up in LA. James, how would you introduce yourself to the people?
Oh, geez. I am a father, husband, sometime bike racer, sometime bike promoter. I do a lot of shit. I do a lot of stuff, and I like to have fun.
I feel like you're a kind of all the time bike promoter now.
I mean, I'm always talking about bikes for sure. But yeah, we've been, I started Mission Crit, which is a fixed gear crit, in 2014. And the very first year we had 24 riders, 24 spectators in a parking lot just south of AT&T Park in San Francisco. And yeah, it's grown like Mission Crit. I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on this, but like it grew into something else. You know, it started as a casual thing. People were racing for beer and we got drunk afterwards. And in its top year, the best year in 2019, we had like almost 6,000 spectators. We had approaching 300 riders from 10 different countries come out to ride a fixed gear race in the Mission in San Francisco at night. And now I'm doing this other thing. It's Formula Fixed. It is gonna change cycling. Is that too much to say?
I mean, if you believe it, man.
If you believe it, yeah.
No, I do. If you believe it, you can achieve it, right?
What were you doing before all this, though? Before Mission Crit? Who was James Grady before pre?
Oh,
Mission
dude.
Crit?
So I've lived lives. So let's see. Immediately prior to Mission Crit, I was doing like music and band stuff. I'm a classically trained French horn player. I played through college. I would still play if I had one, but they're like $4,000. And if I have $4,000 in my pocket, I'm going to go buy bike stuff, right? Like, have you seen those velo bike bars?
Mm-hmm. They're rad.
Yeah, right? So I would do other stuff with $4,000. Mm-hmm. My son needs a new mattress because he is going to be 5 in a couple weeks and he's growing like a weed. And he is about 1.5 feet too long for the mattress that he's on.
Sorry, kiddo, I need a French horn.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I need a French horn and the Velobike scat bar.
Yeah.
No, for real. So I was doing music so I played horn through college when I was 10. I started teaching myself guitar because there was a girl across the street that I wanted to impress. And I hope that this doesn't make a noise when I adjust this because I just have to do it because I feel like it's sinking and I'm like, moving my head farther and farther down so I can get it.
You can crank it.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry to anybody who's listening. So I taught myself how to play guitar starting with that when I was 10. When I was 18, I started playing in bars, like playing and singing, doing
Playing the French
stuff.
horn in bars, right? Yeah, no, I'm totally kidding.
I mean, that
would be a scene.
So I'll get there. I'll get there.
Oh God, I touched on something.
But no, like I did that for a long time, and like I was in bands and toured and recorded and all that stuff, and it was really fun. And one thing through this and like through sports, I played sports growing up, and we'll get there. Like I'm a process person, right? Like, and that is especially good for now when I'm doing cycling, like pursuing cycling as an athlete. Because there's not a lot of results in cycling if you're not the very best, right? And there's always another level and you're always, back on the bottom of the pile trying to get more results, right? So it has to be a process thing. So I was in bands and I loved it, but it started to get pretty tedious, where you like practice once a week on a Thursday and then you maybe have a gig once a month. And it's just, if you're not with the right people who are really motivated and really dedicated, it's hard to drive that forward, which is why like a lot of young people are in bands because they can devote all their time and energy to that thing. As when you get older and you've got other responsibilities, you don't really have the time. So I was dating this girl and she got me involved in theater up in San Francisco, which is really cool, like really fun. I got involved first on the music side. So I got asked to play guitar for shows. Then I started getting asked to play guitar and like say some words and like act and speak. And so the very last show that I did was right before the pandemic. So October 2019. And I was the lead in a play. There was a music component to it. Like I played and I sang and stuff, but I was like acting. It was really cool, really fun. And the cool thing about theater is that there's a start date and an end date. and you know what your commitment is, unlike a band where it's like ongoing and never ending, or like a bike racing team, you're just like, oh God, another season. These same idiots. No, I joke.
They just keep getting dumber.
And younger. That's the thing.
I said dumber.
Younger and faster. No, so like theater was really great and I really loved it. I'd love to get back one day, but with a family and a young kid and this business that we're starting, it's just, there's not a lot of time to do everything in the world. Prior to that, let's see, I played baseball through college, which is pretty fun. I was a catcher.
Oh, dude, that's the best position.
It is the best
Once you put on the gear, you become invincible. It's crazy. I was afraid of the ball, and then I put the gear on, and I was like, I'm indestructible. I don't know why.
We still got to catch the ball, right?
Yeah, I mean.
How are your knees?
Dude, it's like, how are your knees from riding fixed gear?
Not good.
Oh, see, I've never had a problem. Like, anytime anybody says that, I'm like, you must have been doing something wrong. Like, my knees are fine.
I think also like I played soccer in high school and I had like a string of, not like, I never had to get anything repaired, but it was always like one of those things where they're like, if you do this again, we're going to have to cut your knee open and put a bunch of stuff in it. So I didn't necessarily have great knees before I got on track bikes. And then I was also like one of the guys that's like, oh, a light street ratio, 51-12, Where it's just like, I think that like my knees never really stood a chance. And then on top of that, I don't think I've necessarily been super kind to them. But your knees are fine?
Yeah, my knees are fine. Like
When did you start baseball?
When did I start?
Yeah. Like when you're
knee high to a grasshopper, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is young.
With
I
pretty
did
much
T-ball
everybody,
like 5 years old. I did the whole thing like, through high school, through college and stuff. And I had to stop because the summer before my senior year of high school, I was in a car accident. I was rear-ended. And that somehow caused some damage in my back. And so I've got some bad disc, which actually, funny enough, is starting to reappear. And I've had another epidural injection. And I'm likely going to have surgery in like a month or two. Because I've got a bulging disc in my lower back. And so it's like putting tremendous amount of pain. So it's really uncomfortable to like walk, stand, lie down. It wakes me up in the middle of the night. It's really uncomfortable. Riding a bike is great because of the way that you're positioned on the bike, you're bent over. And so the flexion sort of opens up the vertebrae.
Yeah.
And so it kind of like creates some room and relieves pressure for that bulging disc to bulge less, I guess. But it's like severely impinging the nerve. And I just I've been dealing with this for over 20 years now, and I just want it to be done.
Yeah.
How was that first epidural experience? Isn't that crazy? They come in like a huge ass needle, right? It's a little bit jarring.
I mean, I was face down.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So you didn't see what they were up to.
Yeah. A doctor over here is like, bigger the better.
Giant needle.
No, so I had a couple of those back when I was 17, 18 years old, and they worked with decreasing efficacy, right? So like, one lasted 6 months, the second lasted like 4 months, the third lasted like a month or two or something like that. The last thing that happened was I had a doctor go in with a really long needle with a heated tip and to create scar tissue on either side of my spine to stop the nerves from like shooting the pain signals down my legs. Oh. And that worked out pretty well. I noticed about myself that I have to like stay in shape and not get too heavy. Otherwise, if I gain too much weight, it like puts additional pressure on my back, which is true for anybody.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, or people with the same issue, like you especially feel it. So I had to stop playing baseball as a result of that injury because like rotation is bad for me.
Oh yeah. Just like it's all lower back torquing.
I'd love to go to a batting cage with you because that was a great looking swing right there.
Yes. Yeah. There's a reason I don't play ball sports anymore. I was not a T-ball kid, Am I doing it at all? This is gonna be great for Spotify.
Max is like I can't even describe the kind of swing that he's doing right now. But basically, I can imagine you, Max, as a person who would rather take that bat and like pummel the other kids, rather than like hit a ball and play a sport.
Yeah, I always played like contact sports. I played soccer, but then they were like, oh well, what position allows me to hit other kids?
Yeah,
and they're like, oh, goalkeeper. I was like, cool, I'll do that.
How does goalkeeper allow you to hit other kids?
It's
Going
one of
for
those
the ball,
things,
man.
If like you're moving in the direction of a ball and there's like a kid in your way, like fuck them.
So were you like, kick it to that kid right there? Just so you could go take him out?
I actually only in my entire soccer career got ejected from one game, which
That's surprising.
I was a better. I don't know whether I'm trending up or down, but
Old red card Haggard over there.
I got my fair share of stern talking tos, but yeah, only ever ejected once.
Wait, so did baseball cause the injury in your back, or was this from something else?
No, it was the car accident that
it was the
caused
car
the
accident.
injury.
Oh, shit,
but
dude.
like, you know, the
been 3
baseball exacerbated it, right?
Okay.
It certainly didn't help with the rotation and the bending and shit, like stuff like that. But sorry, I was trying not to swear. But yeah, no, it was really difficult to give up playing baseball because I started, let's say, when I was 5, and I played until I was 21 or 22, which is the majority of my life up to that point, right?
Yeah,
So
16 years.
having to stop doing the thing that you thought you were going to do for like a long time into the future, you know, and you wrap up your whole identity around that. You know, it's like what existentialism, where like people become the thing that they are, right? Like your job. If you're a waiter, that's your identity, right? Like if you're a baseball player, that's right. If you're a cyclist, I don't know if you can relate, but you make it your identity, right?
Yeah.
And so that's your person, and that's where you derive value and worth and like your sense of being. So for me as a young person, like having done sports the majority of my life, assuming that I was going to continue playing because I was good. You know, I wasn't going to be a Hall of Famer or anything like that. Don't know if I ever would have made it to the major leagues, but I had a shot.
There was baseball after college.
Yeah.
Did you end up picking up cycling? I feel like every time I talk to someone who had a big injury, they're like, well, then my doctor told me I should ride a bike. Is that like how you ended up on a bike, or was it just like unrelated?
I had a really circuitous route. So I actually started riding bikes when I was little. You know, I grew up in Scottsdale, Arizona, and it's, you know, suburbs. So I had a bike from, I don't know, when I was 3 or 4. My parents like to tell the story that, or my mom in particular likes to tell the story that my dad was out there teaching me how to ride a bike when I was like 3 or 4. And all the other dads in the neighborhoods whose sons couldn't ride bikes, they saw that, and their sons were all older, and they're like, the next weekend they were all out there teaching their sons how to ride bikes. So yeah, I was on a bike ever since I could remember. And let's see, I did BMX a little bit when I was like 10, 11, 12.
Like racing or
Like competitive or
I
freestyle?
did, yeah. Well, you know, I was sort of competitive. I did Winter Nationals in Scottsdale because they had it in this rodeo arena. I don't have great, I think it's called proprioception. So when I was in the air in the jumps, I lost sense of where I was. And so I wasn't very good at jumps.
Oh.
I liked going over the bumps, like as long as I was still making contact with the ground, but being in the air, I couldn't do it. And for the most part now I stay on the ground, but,
it's for the best.
yeah, right. Like I like riding fast in circles.
Yeah.
That suits me a lot more than doing jumps. It looks cool, but I can't do that. But yeah, so I rode, I did BMX when I was 12, and then like a lot of people, especially in the United States, right? Like everybody's got a bike when they're little. Bikes transcend, sex, race, socioeconomic status, like geography. Everybody's got a bike. But like most kids, I started getting into other things. Like I got into baseball, organized sports, and the bike became less of a priority. Like it became not a priority, right? Because I had other stuff to do. And for me, living in the suburbs, it's so car dependent. I had to be driven everywhere. Or then when I turned 16, I got a license, and then I just drove everywhere. Like riding a bike wasn't a feasible option for me. Especially like playing baseball, having to bring a bunch of stuff. I was a catcher. I had a huge bag full of equipment. Most of my games were all over town. When I was in college, there was one weekend during summer ball where I had 3 games in one day all across the valley. So I was in a car probably the same amount of time that I was playing the games. And It's pretty crazy. I was so wiped at the end. But yeah, like bikes, like just like a lot of people, like I kind of grew out of it and set it to the side and came back to it later. But, you know, not to get too far ahead, but one of the things that's really interesting to me is thinking about that and why does that happen and how can we prevent that from happening in the future? You know, I have a couple ideas about why it's happening and a couple of ideas about what I can do, what Formula Fix can do to sort of continue people being on bikes, right? And keeping it part of their lives, if not for the sports side of it, you know, for the transportation and for the recreation side of it.
I was going to ask it, like, do you think that the root of, because I think about this where I'm like, well, yeah, like you were saying, everyone starts on a bike. Like every 10-year-old who like really wants a bike has a bike and they like putz around their neighborhood. But
Yeah.
at some point they stop. And I always think about like, well, is it an infrastructure issue? Is it a car-centric issue? Is it a, you know, the US has like this problem where like everything's so fucking far away, where it's like, you know, getting from Phoenix to Scottsdale, if you're a 15-year-old, is like a pretty serious schlep on a bike. What do you think the barriers are to like keeping kids on bikes? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Dude, I think it's all of those things, right? It's unfortunately there's no simple fix. There's no one thing. You know, it's a systemic issue, like you were saying. It's society is in America. It's built around cars, and it's been that way for decades, right? Like the car companies were hostile to the alternate transportations, like the streetcars and the trains. Like we used to have a huge, robust train network in the United States, and it's a shell of its former self. Like Max and I were joking earlier about, you know, my wife Clare and I flew into Los Angeles this morning, and I looked at a train option between LA and San Diego, and the train option was a bus. Like that's not good. That's not a legitimate option. You know, so yeah, it is structural. Cars are the problem. Cars are always the problem. My soon-to-be 5-year-old son loves his bike. He loves going fast, but we live in San Francisco. We live right in the middle in a really busy area. Like he can ride on the sidewalks, but he's got to stop every block. And it's terrifying to me as a parent that if he makes one mistake one time, that's all it takes for him to just stop existing. Right? Like I am so deathly afraid of that happening. And it's because of the cars. And like part of it is because we choose to live in San Francisco, right? We could, you know, I'm sure there's people like, oh, fucking move to the suburbs or whatever.
Yeah, but
right?
San
Like that shouldn't have to be the
Francisco-
option.
But San Francisco is only 7 miles by 7 miles. Like
Right.
it's like the most population dense city, right? Because of how small it is. I mean, there's hills, but at the same point, like you can walk all the way around through Soma over to Fidei. Like it's pretty flat, that walk, you know?
Yeah,
So
like
it's
walkable
for a lot of,
Yeah,
know,
you can ride
people.
around the hills. There's
Yeah.
like 48 hills in the city and you can easily just walk around them, right? But they're not that big. But yeah, like I would love for him to be able to ride his bike without getting creamed by a car. You know, we have to ride to a park for him to really like, you know, rip it, which is fine. But, you know, one thing I've noticed lately is all these car drop-off lines. And I recently found that it's because like they're cutting down on bus service. And I don't know if that's an issue of funding for schools, but the result is that like a lot more kids are being driven to school, and it's always just like one kid in a car with their parent, right? So it's like private taxi service for kids. Like nobody's riding their bikes, nobody's walking. You know, fewer people are taking the bus. Like it seems really silly to me, especially and I'm specifically speaking about San Francisco, right? Because that's my experience. It seems incredibly stupid to me that these kids aren't trusted to, you know, walk the half mile or whatever. Like some people, of course, live very far away, and I know there's outside cases. But the thing that it comes back to is that the parents are scared of the cars hitting their kids because the car situation is out of control. But they're also directly contributing to the issues, and it's so crazy. So I ride my son to school on the back of our e-bike, and we just every single day there's something that happens, and my son is like, why is that guy angry at us? Like, why did they honk at us? Like I'm not trying to ride like an asshole. I am just trying to exist. I'm just trying to get my son to school. Sorry, I'm like getting really worked up, like emotional here, just like thinking about it. But it's like, it's insane. It's insane. Like we're doing something wrong. We know we're doing something wrong, and nobody's doing anything to fix it.
And cars are just getting larger.
They're getting
We're not
larger. Like people are
downsizing. I mean, luckily around here, what I've seen a huge influx in is like golf carts, which is a super cool method of transportation. And in a city like San Francisco, you could just be all golf carts, man. But instead, people are like, you know what I need? Escalades.
Yeah. And you know what's really funny about that is the golf carts, right? Like if you think about the loudest opponents of these walkable cities, it's always the same people who will go on vacation to like Disneyland or retire to a community where they can drive their golf carts. And it's these walkable communities. Or they go, vacation in Europe and they're like, oh my God, everybody's so thin. And it's because you walk 15 miles a day, right? I don't want to get too personal. My parents moved to Michigan last year. And when they told us about it, I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity for you to downsize from your McMansion in Scottsdale, which after 30 years of living, in the last 10 years, they only in the last 10 years did they actually like get enough stuff inside to make it seem full, because it was just huge, huge house. But they moved and I'm like, oh, this is a great opportunity for you to downsize so you can live, in Ann Arbor, like in a condo. You have smaller space, you get less stuff, but you can go outside, you can walk around, you can walk to the store, walk to get coffee, like meet people, talk to people, be engaged, like a city, right? Like that's the benefit of living in the city. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. And they ended up moving 20 minutes outside of Ann Arbor. It's they have to drive everywhere. It's like, like I love my parents and I know they're going to watch this, sorry. But they're not getting any younger. The cars are getting bigger, faster. Everything's getting worse. And so like, it's a safety issue, not only for them, but for the people around them. And I just, if I had the answer, if I knew what it would take, I would tell you. It's not like, not to get into a topical thing, but it's like with guns, right? Like how many mass shootings? We basically have a mass shooting every day or thereabouts.
I mean, last year there were more than 365 mass shootings. Like there was more than one a day.
Right.
Which is...
But like, what's it going to take? Like there's a problem. We see there's a problem. We know there's a problem. Kids are getting murdered. If we're not making any changes from kids, families, people getting murdered, I don't know. I don't know.
It's also, I mean, the thing that is so hard for me about all this stuff that I've like come to realize is that like there have been pathways to success that are like in other places in the world. Like there was the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand in the 90s, 2000s. And they went in and they're like, this is never going to happen.
No, that
again.
was recent.
Or no, it wasn't Christchurch.
Oh,
it was
in Australia. They said no more guns. And everybody's like, that's fair.
Well, they said, holy shit, like a dozen kids got killed. Like we have to put an end to this. And they did. And there hasn't been a mass shooting I think there's been one mass shooting in Australia since then. And it's like, we have one of those every week.
That's freedom, baby. And yeah, I don't know, man.
And I think that the same thing is true with like this car infrastructure, where it's like, there are all of these other countries that like face the same problem that we do, where it's like, oh, well, our country's too big. So, you need a car to get around. Well, it's like, well, China is even bigger and they have a high-speed rail system. Oh, but it's, there's too many people who, and it's like every time that there's an argument where it's like, well, this is why we need our Escalade. It's like, well, there's all of these.
Also, if people looked at the amount of money that Caltrans spends on highway improvements to add like a quarter mile, one additional lane, it's insanity how bad the government misappropriates and mismanages infrastructure funding, especially with like things like Caltrans, right? It's like you have people who sit on permits for years to do any sort of project, and like that's just, our tax dollars at work. And the crazy part about that is with what they spend to widen that freeway in LA that only lasts like a quarter mile, by the way, it's like you could build half of your railway system probably, or just like, slap it in the middle of the freeways that already exist instead of the lane.
It's also induced demand, right? Like one more lane, bro. Like one more lane, just more people drive and then it gets clogged and you're not fixing the problem. I know I'm going to get this wrong, but it's something in the vicinity of the total cost for the high-speed rail in California. That's how much money we spend per year on like highways and roads.
That sounds accurate, yeah.
It's bonkers. Like, so people leave that fact out when they talk about, the high-speed rail is like $10 billion. It's like,
it's like, very small more than that amount on roads? Of our budget.
Yeah,
we're like the third largest GDP or something in the world.
No, they just, I don't know.
It's, people forget too that traffic is like, as a fluid, traffic is a gas, right? So it's like, if there's space to fill on the freeway, traffic will fill all of the available space, right? So it's not like water that's half filling a pipeline, it's like, it's a gas. So it will fill all of the pipeline.
Dude, I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah,
he's a pipeline engineer.
Yeah.
Like literally.
Yeah, but anyway, so that's probably my analogy for it. And like, that's the best way I can put it is like, it will fill whatever available space that you give it.
Yeah, I don't,
We've just always seen that.
I mean, they call it road violence, right? And it is, it's violence, like pure and simple by any definition. Like,
why do you think people are naturally more angry behind the wheel of a vehicle for some reason? Do you think there's a buffer between? Because I've encountered so many times where it's like, I think people in cars can get pissed off, and I'm like a victim of it myself. I do it, I get pissed off at people driving like idiots, and I'm, it's weird though, because now I try and think a little bit more about it just because I am on my bike all the time. I'm like, there's this barrier between you and the other person in their car, right? And I think that removes sort of like the human aspect of it. And now it's translated, and I've seen it also with like humans on bicycles and, humans walking, pedestrians, whatever it is. It's like there's like a dehumanization of you on your bike, because I think that once you get behind the windshield, it's almost like a video game, and you just disconnect from reality of what the actual thing is that's going on.
No, that's a great word, dehumanization.
Yeah. So I think like, first, why are people so frustrated and pissed off behind the wheel of their car? And then second, like, I guess
are you asking me why people are frustrated?
Yeah,
I'm curious what your thought is. Yeah.
Well, this is the reason why. Well, I mean, first of all, it's because of traffic. They don't think that they are traffic. They are just in traffic. They don't realize that they're the cause of their own suffering. Wow.
Whoa, write that down.
There's gonna be a lot of notes that people should be taking here.
But there's an actual known thing that happens, and what do they call it? The windshield effect. One of the sponsors for a long time has been Bicycle Law, and having had lots of conversations with Miles, who's the main guy over there, he told me about this, and there is a known phenomena where people get behind a wheel in a car, and it's just something flips in them, right? And the way that they say it is like, the windshield effect, right? Because when there's a windshield separating you, something changes. But it's that dehumanization that you're talking about that's, really interesting. I don't want to say interesting like, oh, that's, that's a cool thing. But like why does that happen?
Interesting, like needs to be studied.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There was a meme that, God, there was I don't know how to talk about this. A meme that came out the other day that was like, on the left side, it was this really angry guy like, fuck you, get out of my fucking way. And on the right, it's a little kid. And I'm like, I like to ride my bike, and like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say, oh, everybody should treat each other with kindness, like, because there's something else going on. And I don't know if you guys noticed that there's been less of a, since COVID, like people have been less kind. And I don't know if this is necessarily related, but, people tend not to think about others as much. And, not to bring another, we're going to have so many comments on this, like, oh my God. But like masculinity, somebody the other day on the internet I was reading is like, masculinity isn't about this, like riding in a big truck, like being macho. It's like, it's caring for people around you, caring for people you don't know, caring for your family, taking care of those in your community, right? Like, so, you want to talk about positive masculinity or like kindness in society. It's not about who's the biggest, baddest motherfucker who drives a big truck and scares everybody, right? It's like, I don't know, looking out for the little old lady, or like taking care of your community, or being a good person, taking care of the environment, like being a good steward of your community, like being a good person, stepping up. And I feel like, for me personally, like since COVID, like I've noticed kind of a change in people, that they're less kind, they're less thoughtful, they're just, I don't know.
Still isolated.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah. Like it seems like mentally they very much still are.
They're like,
right?
Stay 6 feet away from me.
Like people haven't been able to reintegrate into society.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much technology has to play with, capitalism and technology, because like capitalism is designed to like isolate us so they can sell us more things. Touching a lot of stuff today.
Just using all the words.
But
I need an iPhone 16 right now.
Yeah, no, but like, like we get sucked into these phones, and like where, it's like, it's this trickle of like, it's just pleasing our brains. It's like tickling our brains, making us see what we want to see. And the algorithms are showing us everything that we want to see and everything we want to hear and want to know. And like, so like, we don't need other people, but that's exactly how we get exploited. And, just like our society stagnates, and it's starting to move backwards with the political things that we are seeing. And, there's a huge wealth disparity in this country, right? Like, and so capitalism and like this isolation is separating us from our money and funneling it upwards to the handful of people who have most of the wealth and who are just sitting on it, right? And so it's making it worse for everybody, is what I guess I'm trying to say. This is a really long tangent.
More Escalades.
Yeah, right?
I think though, like one of the things that I think that like COVID really exacerbated is that I think that like the United States is a country that it prides itself on individualism, which I think is on the surface a good thing. It's like why the American dream exists, where it's like you as an individual, if you work hard, can become whatever you want to be. And I think that like American individualism is in theory a good thing. I think that the thing that with individualism comes isolation. And I think that like COVID turned us away from individualism and towards isolationism in a way that like what happens in the car is like, or what happened during COVID is it's this fostering of this culture of isolationism where it became less about being like a good steward of your community, and it became more about like me, it's about the world became about like this little 6-foot bubble that you're in a way that I think the thing that was super sad about COVID is the way that it pulled apart communities via physical distance. And I think that we haven't recovered from that, where it's like we're still, this physical isolation has like manifested into a social isolation, and that has exacerbated all of the problems with like cars and like why I feel like people are just less kind to each other now.
I think almost in the same breath though, right? We're also experiencing, I think people are feeling that, and people are feeling the effects of that. And I'm curious, have you seen, like being an organizer of events, right? And being an organizer of bike community events and bringing together sort of the bike community overall to host massive things like Mission Crit, 6,000 spectators. Have you seen sort of a thirst for community coming out of people more recently? Because it feels like, at least from my perspective, what I've seen is a lot of people are longing for like group rides and being out and being at the function. And like, I've seen a lot of also like these storefronts and places. And this is an interesting thing that I had never really seen before, kind of like the more recent years, and like maybe the last couple of years since COVID, is there's a lot of these like storefronts that are kind of like this weird storefront on one side, lounge, hangout, coffee shop, whatever area on the other side. And it's this weird merging of like a store shop and a community front. And people like that now own brands and things are sort of selling like this experience and this community oriented thing. And I feel like they're kind of playing on that sort of thirst for community, because people are coming to the spot to hang out. And if you don't feel like you're at the function, then you're less inclined to do the thing or be interested in the brand or whatever it is. Have you noticed something similar to that? Or is this like, I don't know. I'm just curious from your perspective. Are you seeing that?
Yeah. So what you're describing is called a third place.
Okay.
A coffee shop is a third place, somewhere where, library, somewhere where people can come and hang out and like, you don't have to buy anything. You can just be there. That's a third place. So it's not your home. It's not your work or school. It's a third place where you can go and hang out and you have community. In, America, like those third places are going away. Like they're getting reduced. It used to be your church was a third place. Your community center bowling alleys used to be big in the 50s, right? Like they used to be a place where people can go and have community. That's why you see like coffee shops or bike shops, like people hanging out. People haven't changed, since the beginning of time. We're all the same. We're basically identical to the people who came before. We need community. Like there might be a couple people who are true loners who do better on their own, but the vast majority of us need to be around other people, whether we want to admit that or not. So to bring it back to your question about events, yes, especially the first post-COVID event that we did, and like post-COVID, it was the Red Bull Bay Climb, and people in 2021, and like there was like a buzz in the air. Like people were so thankful and so excited to have something to do and like a place to be around their friends and other people and like strangers. Like it was awesome. I love being able to provide that for people, like a place that they can come and like hang out and be around other people, right? Like, that's not necessarily why I do what I do, but like it's absolutely like a happy byproduct. And that's like personally why I love racing at the track. Like if I were to go race a crit, I might have hung out like a little bit before, I might hang out afterwards, but for the most part, I just do my race and I go home, right? And that's a lot of people's experiences. The track though, is like you've got a couple races in the night and in between you're just hanging out and shooting the shit with people. And it's more about community than results. Like, of course, people are competitive and, that's what brought us there in the first place, but hanging out with my friends, talking to people, talking about bike stuff, and then going and getting burritos afterwards, like that's community. And that's the reason why most of us do it. Like if we didn't have that community, nobody would come. Some people would, but like most of us are there because it's like a lifeline, right? Like we don't have many of these opportunities in our life these days. And so when you can find them, you grab onto them. And that's why people get like really passionate, like this run club thing. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
That's why it's like super popular. It's not just a dating thing, but it's like this in real life experiences that people get to go and they get to hang out with people among other people that are, share a common interest. And like, not to poke fun at it, but like the dating thing is real. Like that's what people used to do is like they go and they put themselves in social situations and they meet people. And then they like figure out if they want to date them and then they like get married and things like that. Like Claire and I met in person.
Wow.
And then we ended up getting married. I know, right? Like we didn't, I think the apps were really like just getting started by the time I was finishing my dating. But yeah, that's just like, that's not a substitution for being in person. And like social media particularly, right? Like you can cultivate an image. People will see whatever you want them to see, but that's not real life. So like having the opportunity to go be with people, like that's what people crave. That's what we crave deep down, like on a biological level.
I think it's so funny that we had an episode with Sun Green, who is like a huge community organizer. He runs
Coastal Run Club.
Mm-hmm. And he talks about like the run club boom. And it's so funny that there's like now this joke about, oh, well, Run Club is the new dating app. But it's like going out and meeting people is the new dating app. That's how dating works. Yeah, that's
funny enough.
Yeah.
there's a girl in town here in San Diego that actually started up like an offline dating group. And the whole thing is like, it's legitimately, it's full circle. So
we're going to have alcohol, write some music. We'll call it a bar.
But it's crazy to think that like, people are super interested in it, and it's like, they go out and do different events and whatever. It'll be like a pickleball day or whatever, and people share common interests. It's just really interesting to see that we've gone full circle and people are like, I'm sick of the online connection.
Gen Z invents socializing.
Yeah.
Do you know what else Gen Z invented recently? I found out was the encore. I don't know. I don't want to derail, but
I saw this meme.
The encore,
other day.
like one more song.
Yeah, they're like the band walked off the stage and this girl turned to her friend and said, they're just tricking us. They're gonna come back out. It's a TikTok trend.
Dude, insanity.
How'd you not see that, Max?
I'm working on being less plugged in.
Good for you. I would love to
healthy.
be.
It's not working, but
No, I mean the nature of my job, and I'm sure your guys' stuff is you have to be online, right?
yeah,
Pretty integrated.
yeah, all of this.
Oh.
No, my feed is exclusively the one giant penguin, Sage, and then Moodang.
Moodang, yeah. All right.
What is this?
Oh my God.
All right, we'll talk about it later.
The baby hippo.
The baby hippo.
Oh, yes, that is cute as shit.
Moodang. Yeah.
I didn't know that was
My
the name
feed
of
is
the baby hippo.
all this giant penguin. Have you seen the giant penguin?
I don't think so.
There's a giant. It's like a penguin with. Have you seen?
Not like the Billy
for
Madison
the people who
giant
are
penguin, right?
not here. There is a fourth person in the room here. Come poke your head in really
Secret
quick.
fourth person.
Just come poke your head in the frame.
That's Clare. She's my wife.
She'll be on later. But yeah, there's this. It's a. Have you seen the penguin?
I haven't seen the penguin.
There's a baby penguin that is at like 6 weeks old, is full penguin sized.
Oh, no way.
So it's a baby penguin. It's still like brown and fluffy, but it's emperor penguin size. Yeah,
Dang,
I
life
can't-
goals, man.
If you've
Giant
if
baby.
you're not on the corner of the internet of Moodang and the giant penguin, that's apparently what's going on the other side of the internet that you're on.
So wait, run it. I guess. All right. So let's run this back a little bit to how'd you get involved? Okay. So you went, yeah. So you were writing since you were a kid, and then things developed. You kind of got away from writing. It sounds like for some period of time, but then you found your way back, right? What did that look like for you?
Yeah. So after I had to stop playing baseball, I transferred to Arizona State, and I was commuting, and I got a bike for my birthday, and I rode it, I think, for a couple weeks, and I had locked it up on the balcony of my second floor apartment. No, I didn't lock it up. I just put it out there because I was like, second floor
gosh.
balcony, like it's safe. Turns out it was not safe. Somebody stole it. So my now estranged uncle used to ride back in the 80s. Like he had a Merckx frame at one point. I remember because he was selling it. Maybe it was 80s, 90s. Anyways, like he had an old Nishiki frame in my grandma's garage in Tempe, Arizona. And he's like, yeah, you can have it. I don't think it has wheels. And sure enough, it did not have wheels. So it was a frame and like handlebars. So I took it to a local bike shop, and I didn't have any money to get like a nice group set on it. So the dude at the bike shop's like, well, why don't you just turn it into a fixie? And I was like, what the hell's a fixie? He's like, well, it's just got one gear, and the chain always moves. He's like, I'll do it for you. I'm like, okay. So in, I think this was 2006, 2007, he turned my bike into a conversion, like a fixie. I got, wheels that went out of true pretty much after I rode it out of the store. But they were cheap, right? And so I started commuting a mile each way to school on this conversion. And this was like, I guess, right when the fixed gear thing was starting. I used to get notes on my bike. It was piece of shit 80s Nishiki, right? Like this mass-produced Japanese bike. But I used to get notes that said, sell me this bike. It may or may not have had to do with the fact that if you didn't have brakes in Arizona at the time, you had to like signify it somehow. And so on this blue frame, I had a pink sticker that said no brakes on the side. Just to let people know I didn't have any brakes. I don't know how that was going to help them. But so it got a lot of attention. I didn't get involved in bikes then, right? Like, so I just rode the bike. Moved to San Francisco in 2008, brought the bike with me and put it out back, like of the apartment I was in, and it rusted for a couple years. When I moved, I started running because it was cheap, and I lived right across the street from the Panhandle in San Francisco, which is the little strip of land that shoots off from the eastern side of Golden Gate Park. Mm-hmm. So I cross the street into the park, and I do like a 3-mile loop every day after work. And it was great, and I loved it. I trained with a friend, and I did a half marathon in 2013. and I quit running after it because running sucks. No, it just doesn't agree with me. Right? Like in college, I was a catcher, so I didn't run far distances. Distance running, not for me. So
Different breed of people.
I quit running. Yeah, no, for sure. Like I wish I could run because it's, like the time commitment is so much less.
Yeah.
But I got this bike, got it fixed up and started riding it around. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I think I'm good. I want to be competitive at riding a bike. What does that look like? And I didn't know how to get into organized racing, right? It's still to this day, it's opaque, right? Like you have to know somebody. It's much easier now with Zwift and everything, like you can look it up. But like specifically, I wanted to race my fixed gear bike.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess I kind of heard about this MASH thing that was happening coincidentally in San Francisco as well. And around the same time, I heard about Red Hook, and this dude, Dave Trimble, threw a race for his birthday. And this was January, like December or January. So like 2 months before my birthday. I said, I got a birthday coming up. Why don't I do the same thing? Like if I throw a race, I can meet people who are into the same thing that I'm into. So I went down to MASH and I met, Mike and a couple of the other guys, and they were like these really cool fixies. I was like, oh God, I kind of see these guys on videos. Like, I didn't really know how to act, but there was a young kid there who was like 16 or 17 named Jan. Jan, this little Australian kid. And he's like, oh, I'll help you. I'm like, okay, Jan, cool. So we made some flyers, went around to bars, and Jan stayed outside while I went in and hung the flyers in the bars. And yeah, we did this race, right? Clare, who's sitting over here, we weren't together at the time because I'd gone through a breakup and we were just friends. But she's like, yeah, that sounds interesting. I want to help. And so Clare was there from the beginning. So back to the very beginning, that was the start of Mission Crit. I did it because I wanted to meet people in the fixed gear bike racing and to like make more friends. Talking about community, I didn't know how to get into the community. So I was like, I'm just going to start my own community.
If you build it, they will come type thing.
Yeah. I didn't know how right I was. Knowing now, I don't know if, I for sure would do the same thing, but I did not win my own race. There was a guy who came up from Hellier and he lapped everybody like 4 or 5 times.
Who do you remember who it was?
It was Maurice Mong. He had on like this giant chain ring, probably like 98 gear inches or something like that.
Just rolled away.
Yep. He started in the back and just like spun it up and just kept going because I'd never raced a crit before. I didn't know what they were. So I'm like, I'm just going to put some cones and some tape out. And it was essentially just like a circle.
Yeah.
So it wasn't challenging at all, but it was super fun.
Well, and then that was Mission Crit 1. And then it was like,
what'd you call it the first time? Did you call it Mission Crit?
Yeah, I just called it Mission Crit.
Oh, okay.
I only found out later that there had been a previous Mission Crit that Chris Thorman had put on in a kind of a similar area down by the ballpark. His location was cooler. Like, I'll give him that. But so like the first year I did it, I'd actually wanted to do it like Renegade style where the location ended up being because in San Francisco, they used to have trains, right? Like for passengers, but also for industry. And so in the Mission, there's this diagonal cut that's been filled in, but you can see it on a map running like kind of northeast to southwest on the map. And most of it is called Treat Street now. And so Treat Street at 16th makes this triangle. And I was like, I want to do it there. I was talked out of doing it, just like having people stop the intersections in the first year. But after the first one, I was like, I wonder what it'd take to get a permit for this thing. And I'm the kind of person that is stupid. I don't know when to stop, like I don't have the sense to just be like, this is a lot of work. I shouldn't do this, or this is going to be too expensive. Like I need to call it quits.
You're like, and I'll figure it out type person.
Yeah. Like with Formula Fix now, like I've on this thing, like I just get a splinter in my brain and I need to do it. I need to figure it out. Right. So I was able to figure out how to get a permit from the city, never having done it before. I got a permit. Had to get insurance, had to get all this stuff. Like barricades. Like, oh, what are those? You know, and like renting all this stuff and porta potties. Why do we need? Oh yeah, porta potties. Okay, yeah. So it was kind of a trip, like doing it. And so the second year, like I got a permit to shut it down, and we got a lot more people came. And the cool thing about it is because it was on a Saturday night in the Mission, there's just like a lot of foot traffic, you know. And I think really serendipitously, the location that I chose had a bus line that was easily rerouted. And because of the condensed format, like just the location worked really well. And the neighborhood was fine with it. It's like half residential, half industrial. So it was like mostly fine.
Honestly, the right mix, right? Instead of just industrial park or like just some neighborhood that's pretty mad about you closing down their street.
Exactly.
It's a little bit of a combo.
Exactly. And then in the following years, like there's a Gus's market. So is this really nice market on the course, and they've got this huge indoor parking lot. So we were able to talk to them, and they very kindly let us use this space. So I don't know if you ever came up, but like
I raced it twice.
Yeah, so it smelled awful because it had all the garbage and the compost in there. But like it was a great spot because it gets cold and windy in San Francisco at night. But there's this like sheltered place for the athletes to go, and like it was just it was so cool. I'm glad, and I feel very fortunate that I was given the opportunity by so many people to do that thing for the community, right? Like it wasn't easy. I could have been shut down at any number of steps by either the city or the police or the fire or the neighbors or anything like that. And like, you know, I went through the proper channels and made, you know, forged good relationships, and just having had that opportunity to do something like that was, you know, like, I think a lot of people would probably look at me and say, oh, you're doing this thing for us. And I'm like, well, sure, but like you're giving me the opportunity to do that. And like I am grateful for that opportunity, right? Like people put a lot of trust in me, whether that's for putting on events or like, you know, the culture of fixed gear, right? Like I don't claim to be the flag bearer or whatever, but you know, kind of trying to set my humility aside, like people, like I'm a recognizable person in the space, and like people can look at me and like, oh yeah, he's associated with this thing, and I want to represent it well, and I want to do right by the culture and the community for the opportunity that I've been given, right? So I think we were able to do a really good job with Mission Crit. Super fun. It kind of like COVID kind of killed it. Like I did stuff for 2 years. I think it was 2 years afterwards. Or no, it was only the one Mission Crit afterwards. So we did, in 2021, we did the Bay Climb and Short Circuit for the first time for Red Bull, sorry. And then the second year, I was finally able to realize the dream that I'd pitched to Red Bull prior to the pandemic of like a weekend of events. So you've got the Red Bull Bay Climb, which is the hill climb, Mission Crit in between the Bay Climb, and then the Red Bull Short Circuit, which is the go-kart track race, which I'd been trying to get them to do for years. And after the first one in 2021, all the Red Bull people came up to me who were there, like these, you know, regional, national level people. They're like, oh my God, this was amazing. Why don't we do this more often? Why didn't we do this before? I was like, come on. So it was great. And they loved it. And then everybody left. Because Red Bull is an amazing company, and the people that go through Red Bull are like hands down the best people that I've had the opportunity to work with. Like even
Also,
after they move on and I like reach out to them.
After, right?
After I reach out to them, they're like, yeah, I'd love to help you. How can I help you? Like one of our advisors was one of the first 10 people hired at Red Bull North America. And he put us in contact with a guy at a non-alcoholic beverage company who we're talking to about sponsorship, who is number 3 at Red Bull North America, right? So like these people are just like amazing. So whatever Red Bull is doing to train these folks, you know, I know they only take high quality people to begin with, but then they like train them up and like it's working. Like whatever they do is working. So the Short Circuit, like all these people like loved it, but then they all left because like working at Red Bull, from what I understand, is like it's not easy, right? Like they expect a lot of you.
Yeah.
So like, you know, people move on. So I essentially had to start from scratch in year 2, and they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do the go-kart track race. So I was able to work the budget into the Bay Climb so that we could do the kart track race. They didn't, they love doing like these community events, but it was an afterthought, right? And so like I'm really fortunate that I was able to do it because these are amazing. And I think that this format and like this is going to be the launching pad for the future of cycling for a number of reasons.
What reasons?
No, we're waiting.
All right, so
let's dive into it.
I think also like,
unless
probably by the time that this is out, Formula Fixed will have happened. So I think that like this is going to be funny because it's like we're talking about something that by the time that this is out will have happened.
True.
But like tell people what is the format of Formula Fixed.
yeah.
Imagine we're investors. Sell us Formula Fixed.
With those pants, I know that you don't have any money. I'm sorry, Max. No, I love you, kid. Max, those are very nice pants.
Yeah. These are $35 Army Navy surplus store, just in case you want to go buy some,
Down here in San Diego, you get to charge a premium for those.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Formula Fixed is the outgrowth. It's the next. Sorry, I'm not sure how to say it. It's the thing that's coming after Mission Crit, right? Like we're taking everything we've learned from Mission Crit and we're starting this new thing. Formula Fixed gear racing is it's going to be in two phases. The first phase are these go-kart track races, which centralizes the racing action and allows spectators to see the whole thing, right? When you think about cycling in America, right? From the spectator perspective, like it's garbage, So how many times have you spectated a gravel race?
Actually, a few.
Like twice. And it's only because we have like this standing tradition of we go yell at people on the top of Double Peak. But like, would I go drive more than 30 minutes to watch a gravel race? No. Like, no.
Yeah, and our version of spectating is like screaming at people and handing them up. Modelo.
which can be fun, right?
Yeah.
But
It's different.
Yeah, it's different,
We
right?
wait for 2 hours for the leaders to come through. They come through, they're gone.
That's right. So that's it, right? Like, and a similar problem with a criterium. Like if we were all to go to CBR or what's your big one down here?
We have Barrio Logan.
Yeah, Barrio, dude. You talked to Super Dave about that. He's super happy. He won like twice in one day in that thing.
Yeah. They used to give out tortillas if you won.
They still do.
Do they?
Yeah. I don't know if they're like homemade anymore.
You used to get like a stack of tortillas, handmade. That
Like
morning.
right there. Oh,
like
that morning.
they hand them to you on the podium.
Okay.
And they're like, here's your tortillas. And it was great. I don't know if they still do that.
Yeah, you still get tortillas for winning. I wouldn't know, but my teammates have been on the podium, so.
Keep going.
Well, I was just going to say, instead, I want to give away, like, how Trobro gives away the pig?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to think of a good thing like that to give away. Like tortillas, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I don't know about livestock, though.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean,
Something you have to take home, like a goldfish, that you have to take home, and then now I have this goldfish. Damn it.
At Tour of America's Dairyland, the one that I always love is they give away a wheel of cheese, but it's not like a wheel of cheese. It's like a wheel of cheese. It's like
Will this fit in the overhead compartment?
Yeah, where it's like, I was like, oh, dude, if I win this thing, like I have no idea how I'm gonna get this home. So I love prizes that are mildly inconvenient. I think we need to inconvenience more winners.
I love that. Okay, so I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I just get
continue.
like super off topic.
No, it was our fault.
Well, let me take a step back. We did Mission Crit for 7 years, and I guess you'd have to be stupid not to learn something after doing something for 7 years, right? So as you probably have noticed, costs for things are going up. Bike racing in particular, it's more expensive for people. It's more expensive, like people, including like police that you have to rent, people you have to hire. The infrastructure is getting more expensive. To put on an outdoor crit, it costs a lot of money. The permits, the people, the infrastructure, lots of people, right? Everything costs money, and it's not getting any less expensive. The insurance thing is a big issue because like municipalities now are like really hyper aware of costs and like insurance, and like they don't want to be liable for anything. So they're requiring higher, coverages for events and things like that. So that means that I have to pay more for an event, and that means that the participants have to pay more for an event, right? Like, so costs are just increasing. There's no economy of scale when we're like doing mission crit in one location or a second location or whatever, moving the stuff around, it just adds costs. So like the costs aren't going down for these events. Like the more you do, like if you're starting a business and you're producing something, you expect that the costs of the thing you produce, it will cost less to produce the more you produce, right? Like that's just kind of basic. So for bike racing, that doesn't happen.
It's flat.
It's basically flat, right? So, having done a couple of these Red Bull short circuits, like I pitched it to Red Bull and I put them on, like I did the budget, like I brought everybody in, like those were my events, under the Red Bull banner. I saw something there and I was like, this is amazing. Like it's loud, people are into it. Like it's short, the heats are 6 minutes long and people's attention spans aren't getting any bigger. So it's like, what if all right, the real story is I wanted to jump. So I mentioned that there's phase one.
Yeah.
Phase one is go-kart tracks, centralizing the action, bringing the spectators in, right? Like phase two, I don't want to tell that yet. Okay, so I know I'm jumping around and I apologize for people watching this. This is going to be mind-numbing. So there's no economy of scale with the costs, right? Like, so when you do multiple events, it doesn't go down. To get back to the crit thing, like if we were to go spectate a crit and stand at one static position for a 60-minute crit, like it's really thrilling watching the bikes go by at like 35 miles an hour, right? They're moving a ton of wind. If it's Tulsa, there's a shit ton of people out there and it's like a party, right? But if you're trying to tell the story of the bike race, we're doing a really bad job of telling it, right? Because like, think about a football game. If you're there in person spectating, you can see the entire game, the entire time, the whole story of the game. For a bike race, you can't do that. You're standing on the side, it goes past, you're like, okay, that was cool. And then you wait a minute and a half and then it comes back around again. But there's
somebody else is on the front. There's like a team out. There's a dude off the front. You don't know how that happened, how they got there, what happened. And there's so much that happens on the backside of the course because why would anything ever happen at the start-finish line?
No, exactly. And the start-finish is where everybody wants to be, right? So like I did the math and in a 60-minute crit, a spectator in one position sees 8.5% of the entire race.
Wow.
That's 8.5% of the story of the race.
Yeah, I see 5 minutes of it.
Imagine trying to watch like a movie and seeing 8.5% of it.
Also not like a continuous 8.5%.
Nope, just like chopped up in bits, like in like 15-second clips.
Oh.
It's nuts, right? That's not the way to do it. So I think like cycling is formatted poorly because we essentially are taking this European version of the sport and we kind of transplanted it into America and expected people to like it. It's like culturally it doesn't quite fit because it's very European. A lot of skinny white dudes and bikes, like it's not really American. So when you think about American sport, the way that we feel it's gonna like take off is by leaning into like the American sort of ideas about sport, right? Like it's shorter, it's faster, the action is all centralized so that you can see the entire story the entire time. All right, so here it is. So phase one is gonna be go-kart tracks, right? Like everybody in the building can see the entire race the entire time. It's inside, so we could go do it in Chicago in February and it would be fine, right? Like you can't, right? Like weather agnostic. And like what we're doing is we're presenting cycling entertainment content. It's not gonna be, 27 different categories for all age groups and like left-handed people named Peter gets their own separate special category. It's not everybody gets a trophy, right? Like we're going to have a select group of people who are going to be doing these races. And so it's a show, like it's entertainment value. So we're going to, charge a little bit of money for people to come in and spectate like any other sport in America, right? Because what we want to do is take steps to professionalize this and, really essentially turn the model of cycling upside down. Because right now it's a participant sport. Like we all pay
Subsidized.
to participate in cycling.
Yeah.
Like none of us are professionals. the whole concept of a professional is something that all of us like to talk about, all of our friends like to talk about, because like, what is a professional in cycling? There's nothing, anyways, that's a whole other conversation. But like phase 2 of this, where we want to take it. So if we are successful with this go-kart track portion of it, we want to put crits in stadiums, not around stadiums.
I knew it was coming, like Superdome.
In stadiums,
Yeah.
right? Like you're centralizing the action, you're making it spectator friendly, like you're catering to the spectators. It's also really incredibly easy. One of the things we haven't touched on yet is broadcast. So not only is there a lot of revenue potential in broadcast, but that's how you reach more people. Like, and that's just going to make everything get better, right? Like the more people you reach, you can, talk to bigger, better sponsors who bring in more dollars, which will like allow you to do better things like improve the broadcast and reach more people.
Supercross does it.
Dude, so Supercross is used to be outside, right?
Yeah.
They brought it inside. Like so many other things, golf has a new thing where they're putting it in a stadium. Tiger Woods is leading the thing. I want to bring this up too. My friend Ingmar was telling me about the biathlon. The thing in Nordic countries where you ski
And then shoot.
and you shoot and then you ski back. They used to do it where you start and you ski 2 hours out into the woods, you shoot your target, and then you ski 2 hours back. Right? Like you can't spectate that. It's like spectating the cross race
Yeah.
with guns,
Yeah. Which is cool.
which is like pretty American to be perfectly honest. But like they've now put that in a stadium. And so people can spectate. And once they did that, it quickly became the most attended, exciting thing in those countries, right? Like it was like immensely popular. So why aren't we doing that with bikes?
Well, we've seen that also, again, like in Europe though, but like the Track Champions League had like a huge viewership this year.
Max, I love track. I race track. I don't know if I mentioned, but I came in third at the Masters Nationals, Madison Nationals in Detroit last year with my partner, Martin Vecchio. I don't like spectating track.
Yeah.
If track was going to be the answer for like making cycling popular in America, it would have happened any time in the last 130 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's not going to happen.
A lot of people don't have a clue what's going on either.
Which is also true.
Yeah.
The rules are convoluted.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's like, why are there 4 dudes going around working together on this one, and then everybody hates each other in the next race? So yeah.
Right. Like, and such a big component about what we're doing is storytelling, right? Like not only about the race itself, which, with the go-kart track races, the format is an elimination race. The heats are 8 riders. The last rider across the line on every lap gets eliminated. So you don't have to know a backstory about a rider or the entire team to understand what's happening. It's a qualification round, then the semifinals, and then the final. So like anybody who's seen
Standard
sports,
bracket.
it's a standard bracket.
Yeah.
Like there's no like in-depth explanation needs to happen, right? Like people would just automatically understand it because the last person, left standing with their arms across the line, that's the winner. And the winner is the winner. It's not like, oh, he came across the line first, but he's not winning the race. Why not?
Oh, well, this other guy has more points.
Or like a lower, cumulative time, right? Yeah. And it's like, but he's on the same team, but then it's just, so like, I love that. I love the European model of racing. I love track cycling.
They have their place.
They do have their place,
It just
right?
isn't very American.
No. And, I think that there's a huge opportunity. Like criteriums are really incredibly exciting. And I think that they have just not been formatted properly. So our goal is to put bike races in stadiums because I think that that's going to make cycling popular. And you know what? So to get back to something we talked about a very long time ago about kids riding bikes and then it falling off and then picking, what we didn't talk about is like people would pick up bikes again when they're older. Like me, I'm old, I'm 41. Max, I just learned you're 28, which is
Isn't it crazy?
frustrating. I know, right?
When I first met him, I was like, he was like 24, and I always thought he was older than I am. And then I was like, you're what? And he's like, yeah, man. So what the hell are you talking about?
I'm going to take this all as a compliment, by the way.
You should.
You carry yourself very,
But,
adult.
like a lot of people come into cycling after they are done being competitive in other sports. Sometimes through injury, as you mentioned, like, oh, I hurt myself. I have to ride a bike. They come into it like later on. And I think that like the reason why there's no continuum is is two reasons. One, there's no aspirational competitive professional league, right? Like there's no league for like Major League Baseball or football or the NBA for like kids to have a poster on the wall and say, I want to be Max Haggard one day. I want to be just like him. I want to be a professional cyclist. Whether or not that happens, chances are probably not. But it's like something that kids can dream about. And then the other thing is that there's no youth development league, like a little league or, Pop Warner or whatever for football. There are some, like NICA is doing a really good job, but from what I understand, it's not as ubiquitous as like these other team sport leagues. And what I think that does, like having the professional aspirational league and then the youth sport league, it creates a continuum.
There's a pipeline.
Yeah, a pipeline of lifelong fans. And it shows people, importantly, that there's something to do in cycling. Like you can be a professional. Like you can aspire to be a professional, whether or not that happens, like, who's to say? But like this is really similar to like women's sports, right? Like there's nothing for a lot of women's sports. There's nothing after college.
Yeah.
There's no professional leagues. Right? There are for some sports, but not for everyone. Like there's not one-to-one for men's sports. So like, like creating that continuum and having these professional leagues so that, in the women's sports or in cycling in particular, like they know that there's a future there.
That's not true. Like almost all of the women's sports have professional leagues now, just so you know.
Okay. Well, I'm an asshole.
I think the other thing that's hard is that the process of becoming a pro cyclist is so nebulous. Where if someone was like, well, how do you become a pro? How do you get, it's like, well, you're like good and then you win some stuff and then like hopefully someone sees you and then maybe you end up on like a shitty pro team. And if you win a bunch of stuff on a shitty pro team, you get on a better pro team and then you get bounced around a bunch. I think the thing that is hard about like with like ball sports or something like that, or like the formula racing is like in Europe is like, well, you start playing ball in high school or in middle school, you go to high school, you go to college. If you're good in college, and like there's a very obvious funneling that happens. And it's like, well, if you're good in college and you win the Heisman, you end up in the NFL. If you win a March Madness, like, all right, cool, you end up in the NBA. And I think the thing that is always hard is that there's also no clear forward path to cycling.
Right.
Where there's like, well, you just have to be good and hope that someone finds you. It's kind of like being the analogous thing I think is like being a musician, where it's like you kind of just like keep putting out your best work. You just keep racing hard. You keep training hard. You keep winning races and hope that one day someone comes knocking. And I think that the thing that's cool about, Formula Fixed or like any time that we've seen, like, I saw this with Lifetime Grand Prix, is anytime that there's like a centralizing organization, that it makes like pathways to getting paid more clear. It makes like more, the thing that's hard is that there's like, besides the UCI in cycling, there's no overarching thing. It's like, oh, well, there's this series who gets paid out by these people and there's this series. And I think the thing that is cool about any time that there's someone like you or like the people at Lifetime who are willing to like be like, we are it, we're the premier event, we're the premier series, means that it's like, oh, it removes that layer of ambiguity of like, well, what's the path forward,
right.
And now it's like with what you guys are doing, it's like, well, you build a resume, you send it in, and it's like, now it's more like, well, if you get selected, you end up in this program, and then, you guys are paying racers to race their bikes. Like
yeah, that's right.
That's in America is like, there's 100, probably less than 100 people in the US who collect a paycheck from racing bikes. And so it's like, that in and of itself is like pretty unheard of. And I think that like the idea that you guys are going with, where I also know some insider information, but like you guys have this thing that is replicatable. Like, oh, cool, like we want to host a race in Chicago. Like we can roll out Formula Fix Chicago, right? We can roll it out in LA. We can roll it out in New York. We can roll it out. And I think that means that there's this like known quantity event that becomes this aspirational thing where you're like, oh, well, one day there's going to be a Formula Fixed in my hometown and I'm going to go race it, you know? I think that is like what, as you said, that's like what cycling needs, you know? We don't need a million categories. We don't need a men's 75 plus Cat 4 race. We need something that is going to, I hate to be like, capture the hearts and minds of like young people who are on bikes, but like that's how sports survive, right? Is like a throughput of people who are like childhood fans into adult fans into, you know, the kind of end put.
No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, like I think ironically, like even though this pursuit is designed to be a spectator forward thing instead of a participant thing, I could really see this growing the participant side of things, because like people will see this and be like, oh man, that's super cool. I want to get on my bike, or I want to be in it one day or whatever. And so this could drive, hopefully this will drive the participation and normalization of cycling, you know, across the country, across the world. Yeah.
I think also like the thing that, because I started racing my bike on track bikes. That's like how I got into bike racing. Is also, I got my first bike that I raced Red Hook on a bike that cost me like sub $1,000.
I mean, that's such a big thing because the barriers to entry are so much less. Like Dante talked about it, right? Like he got his first bike was really inexpensive. And I mean, there's this elitism in cycling that, you know, unfortunately, like we've all part of it, right?
It.
Like, yeah.
Like I want to bike.
I mean, I love my nice carbon stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like, you know, nice stuff is nice stuff, and I don't gatekeep, but you know, like the affordability factor is something that's like so severely overlooked, because like, you know, being able to get more people into bikes, like into bikes in general is just going to be better for everybody, and the price point is so low, and that's like that's the thing that was like really appealing about fixed gears is, you know, fixed gear racing is that, you know, you could get, you know, $400 or whatever, $500, and you could get a bike that works perfectly fine, and you can race against whoever at Red Hook. And what it comes down to is your ability, not the equipment that you're on. Mm-hmm. You know, like cycling is such a sport of marginal gains, like in every single aspect. And so it's this, like, my friend Ingmar, I mentioned him earlier. Mm-hmm. Like I built a video game with him. He's super cool. He designed the Venge. Cool. He designed the shape library that designed the Venge. Like that
is one of my favorite bikes.
I regret selling mine.
Dude, it is like when I saw that thing, even when like the tarmac and everything took over, and anyway, this is a soapbox. Sorry. Anyway, I was like, I need to buy a Venge now. Like when I first started riding was around that era. Dude, coolest bike still that they ever made.
So my friend Ingmar, who designed designed the shape library that designed the Venge, right? Like he changed a sport. Like no, not cycling. He changed another sport. So he's the head of sport science or something for the national speed skating team for the U.S.
Cool.
And he gave this talk that I watch at least once a month about a thing that he calls Pareto gains. So the Pareto principle is that 80% of your gains come from 20% of your effort. And so he's like appropriated that, and he has this thing called Pareto gains, and essentially boil down to like cycling is a sport of marginal gains, right? Like we talk about sock height and like designs on our socks, and like, oh, this other design is like half a watt faster, right? But you know, we've basically maximized everything that we possibly can. And the next advancement in cycling isn't going to be a marginal gain. It's going to be what he calls a Pareto gain, like something like Graham O'Brien in a Superman. That was a Pareto gain that was immediately banned.
Yeah.
It was wild. He was made fun of. It was outside the box, but God damn it, it worked.
Yeah, he won a lot of
right.
Yeah.
So Ingmar was working with the speed skating team in the Pursuit, and similar to Pursuit on the track, you've got, I don't know if it's 3 or 4, I'm so sorry. You've got skaters who are going around in an oval, and they exchange, just like in the team pursuit on the track, right? But when you have somebody exchanging, you have two people in the wind and it burns energy. So long story short, they did a lot of research, and Ingmar came up with a way that enabled I don't think they were even ranked, the men's US team, in their first time that they deployed this new method, they beat the best team in the world. And what it is, it's called the American push. So in speed skating, you line up, you don't have to exchange. And what they do is you're so close to the person in front of you that you can actually put your hand on them. So what they do is they line up and they just skate around single file. They never exchange. They just push the person in front of them, right? So it's called the American push. And now every single team does it. And nobody does it the old way. Nobody exchanges anymore.
That's
so they changed a sport through this crazy idea, right? It was something that is outside the norm, like Graham Brie, that people might look at and make fun of and be like, oh, that's so stupid.
It's like
and
the
dismiss
flop.
it.
Yeah.
Because and in cycling, in probably all sports, right? When something new and radical is tried, you're battling against this norms. Tradition, norms. You're battling against this stuff. Might not be any rules against it, but oh, that's not how it's done. People in the pro peloton, they still don't ride aero socks, even though it's been proven to save several watts. Why? It's tradition. There's a norm. You look weird if you wear aero socks. So Ingmar came up with this. They implemented it. Now everybody does it, right? So my point being, what we're doing with Formula Fixed, with the reformatting of the things, first with the go-kart tracks, then with the stadiums, it's weird, right? It's not the norm. And I'm sure plenty of people, the dozens of people who are going to be listening to this, I'm so sorry. They're going to be like,
whoa, maybe more than a dozen.
Well, because of me, and I've just been rambling, but they're like, that'll never work. And it's why not? Nobody's tried it.
Yeah.
Why not give it a shot? Dante, for everybody at home who didn't listen to the Dante interview, you should listen to Dante's interview. It's really good. And he drops a lot of knowledge. And then Chris Tully had an interview on the Criterium Nation podcast that came out today, I think. Anyway, so I disagree with them in a couple regards. In that Dante rightly pointed out that it's going to take a lot of money, right? Anything is going to take a lot of money, these days. Everything costs money. But I think that, Chris Tully was saying that, I guess I don't really disagree with Dante, but Chris was saying that, it can't be a league anymore. Nobody can do a league. You can't do that. But I think that there's opportunity for that if done in the right way. And I don't know where I was going with this. I'm so sorry.
Was it related to the NCL attempt at the thing? Or are we not talking about that?
No. So I think that the NCL, I was disappointed that they went away, because I think that more people doing stuff in the cycling space is going to be better, because that means more attention. Yeah. It's a shame that it didn't last. I have some personal thoughts on that, but I hoped it would. We've taken some learnings from what they've done, and one of the things they did correctly is they identified that there's no professional league in cycling, right? There's no overriding thing. USA Crits was this collection of existing events, and that works to an extent. But so I was on this video project with my friend Max a couple years ago, and we had set it up. We lined up some really good backers and a lot of really good people who were really interested in this thing. And we were going to do a documentary series on American crit racing. And it fell apart because none of the teams there was no cohesive league. There was no cohesive series that all the teams went to all the races. So how are you going to create a story and narrative if your star riders, don't show up for 2/3 of the season? It's difficult. So what we're doing with Formula Fixed, it's story driven and character driven. And so we're going to have this cohesive league. Sorry, I'm kind of getting sidetracked. Once we, I don't know. Sorry, I need somebody else to talk right now to gather my thoughts.
I think the character driven stuff is so important. I think that like one of the things that I have just noticed that has always been so painful to me is, and we've talked about this in other episodes, is that a lot of the guys who are European pros are horrible interviewers.
Yeah, like socially, you're not seeing those people. Like, there's no relatability there, right? You see Jonas, and it's like, all right, maybe Pogge's the most. Like, I like Vanderpool. I think he's a funny dude. He's got character, but like, I don't relate that well to him. He's still just a European dude that I don't really know.
I think that the biggest superstar that cycling has had in the last 20 years is Peter Sagan, right? Like that is like the guy who I think has like been.
Sure.
And the reason is like, obviously he was an incredibly good bike racer.
He's acting up. He's got personality.
Interviewed well and had personality. And I mean, but like there's tons of people who have the same palmarès as he does, who are half the character, and bike racing will forget about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that like the idea that you guys have of highlighting individual riders, and like, I mean, that's why, I mean, F1 viewership skyrocketed after Drive to Survive, right? Because it's about racing, but it's essentially a character-driven narrative, And I think that that's like, I was hoping we would see with Unchained, with like the Tour de France, where we would like get to see like characters. And the thing that's just always so brutal is you watch post-race interviews with these guys who are, and it's just, they're brutal to watch.
It's not what you get out of F1.
It's not what you get out of F1.
F1 drivers are characters, man.
Yeah.
Well, I think I have a couple thoughts. In a lot of cases, a lot of people are scared to speak their mind, because especially with professional cycling, like most of the guys make, 30,000 euros a year or something like that. Like it's not a
minimum salary is 40K.
Easily replaceable, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's people like Peter Sagan who are allowed to speak their mind and, like be a character, right? So the character forward thing is something that my co-founder and partner Clare like cottoned onto really early. Like, can you guys tell me anything about the WNBA?
Caitlin Clark.
Yeah. So the fact that you said a player before anything, so characters, individuals are driving sports right now, right? It's like teams are kind of secondary or tertiary, especially the league. So it's the characters.
Look at the NFL and fantasy football. People get behind individual players, and the interest in it is so high because you have stake in the game with the person that's involved, right? Sorry, didn't mean to derail you. I was just relating, but
no, yeah, that's interesting. Although the NFL takes a league first approach, whereas like the NBA, for instance, really figured out a long time ago that by letting the players lead, more people were going to follow. And so like that's what we're trying to do, especially getting this off the ground, because like we've got such a wealth of characters.
Yeah, what does that mean?
And
I say players lead.
Yeah, so like I use characters in like the most positive term. Like we want to play up the individuality and like what makes our riders special. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a really compelling story, right? You like, as you guys know, you might have to dig a little bit, but it's there because everybody's walked their own path to get to essentially the same place. Like everybody's participating in this league, but everybody took myriad ways to get there. So they've all got character, and I really want to. One of the comparisons I've been using a lot is professional wrestling. Like I don't watch wrestling, like I've never followed it, but it's so intriguing to me because they do story and characters like so well. Granted, they're not real, but like, at the end of the day, what is it? It's a couple guys pinching butts in the ring, but they tell the story so well, and it's like so compelling is that you want to tune in. I think that there's a balance between wrestling and like, what we're doing. We can find a happy medium where we don't need to play up the drama, but, I really want people to be unfiltered and like express themselves and be themselves, like not be we went out there and gave it 110% today. Thank God, it was on my team, whatever.
Thank you to my sponsors.
Yeah, thank you to my sponsors.
So I couldn't have done it without this wheel set.
Yeah, without this particular enema. Yeah, exactly. No, like I think that there's like such a wealth of realness, and to try to tie it back to what we were talking about earlier with that like isolation and the desire for community. I think there's also a desire for like sincerity and realness, not like reality television realness, because that's manufactured realness, but like realness, like what we're doing now. And people who are open and honest, because like it's this weird thing with media where people are very conscious of it. They're self-conscious. Once you get a camera around, like people now instinctively, like they change.
Yeah.
They know it's there. Like I can, if somebody in my periphery pulls out a camera, like I can tell if it's being aimed at me.
Yeah.
Like I know. And I'm sure like most people do these days, right? So like, I think that there's a real desire for just authenticity, and I want somebody to come off the track and get off their bike. And like, if we stick a mic in their face, be like, that fucking guy just like ran me over, it's like, just like getting heated, they're going to be sharing a beer after the race. They're not enemies, but it's just like, there's a reality and like an immediacy to this that I think that it has just like gone untapped. Like even the F1 stuff, like it's compelling, but it's like, it's so highly edited and manufactured even, like
the best stuff
cool
is the
see all
stuff in
that.
the car when they're like cursing at each other and they're like, mother effing so-and-so, like the racer's mic'd up. That's the best stuff,
Yeah, it's unfiltered, right?
Yeah.
I was like, did you ever like watch the NFL mic'd up? That stuff?
I love
Dude,
that sort of stuff.
That was one of my
good.
favorite. And it was all totally candid. None of it was scripted, but like getting to actually see.
Marshawn Lynch eating Skittles on the sidelines, like, come on, power pellets.
Or,
Yeah, dude.
or just like all of like this whole thing of like, these two guys who are like lining up and he's like, you got to take it easy on me, man. I'm hurting out here. And the guy, it's like, you don't see that when you're like just watching the camera, but I think that just like getting that unfiltered realness of like, hey, this is what it's actually like down here on the field was so cool, so compelling. Also, just like, I think the other thing, and like this is part of the reason that we started this podcast, is that we want to make athletes seem like real people, which sounds silly because obviously they are. But I think that like with that like realness and that authenticity comes a side of people that like we're not used to seeing. All of the super high level athletes now, it's like, well, you don't just get to be a high level athlete, you also have to be a media spokesperson now, right? And I think the thing that's so cool,
And even on their social media, they're beholden to certain standards of what is acceptable from sponsorships and things like that. They never get to even break down on social media and be legit. It's like, because it's like their name and likeness and everything is controlled. It's like, if you work for a particular company in a sense, right, or a particular team, you're owned by that and your presence is owned by that.
Yeah.
There's no realness to it.
No, I got to push back on what you say a little bit, Max, because like, like while I said, we want realness, like we crave that authenticity, like these days, like, the reality of the situation is that like you kind of have to have a social media presence.
I was
And
going
like,
to ask about the role of media and what you guys are doing and what you think about it all and how to continue your thought. I just want to piggyback on that.
Yeah, like these days, like there's a minimum expectation for better or worse, right? Like people, unless you're like Shohei Ohtani, like you can't just go dark and not interact with people just because that's, and this is kind of where I struggle. Like come at it from both sides. Like you're an athlete first, but you're also like building a brand. And, I kind of feel weird saying that, like kind of gross, but not only the brand of you, but like, you're also upholding the Major League Baseball, if we're going to use Shohei Ohtani, right? And you're being paid to be a representative of the team and of the league, right? So like, that's kind of the trade-off, if you will.
yeah.
So like, what?
It's just more entertaining to watch a show, man. I mean, performance, like athletic performance is obviously key, but if you're taking a look at the difference between a high performing athlete.
Here, come in.
Yeah, come in here and
Come on in.
make that statement.
Yeah.
Like just the difference between a high performing athlete who is,
Here, one second. Pause the thought. Pause the thought.
okay.
I think it's wide enough though.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I guess I'm
You have to be right up on it though.
okay. I think it just makes it more entertaining. Like, it's people want to come and watch sport because they want to see what the human body can do, what the human body is capable of. That's obviously, a huge component, arguably the main component, but it really does make it more entertaining when you see a personality behind it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen that. Well,
Introduce yourself real quick, by the way.
yeah, really quick. Yeah. Who are you?
I'm Clare Grady. I'm James's wife. I'm the co-founder of Formula Fixed, and I also worked a lot on Mission Crit when that was happening.
Claire is the doer, I would say. Is that right? James is nodding.
Get
James has
shit
the
done.
Big picture.
I have 2 mics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
James has the big picture. I'm good at getting shit done. So.
I think that's so true though. I think the thing that we are seeing now more than ever is we want people who are exceptional athletes, but also exceptional people. I think that's like, I think Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese in the WNBA is like the perfect case study for that, right?
Ilona Maher
Yes.
in the
Absolutely.
In women's rugby,
blew up.
where I think that I could not, to be completely honest, I could not name 2 WNBA teams. I know who Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are. I have no idea who won gold at women's rugby. I know who Ilona Maher is.
It was New Zealand.
It was New Zealand.
And Canada won silver.
Kind of won silver.
Well, there you go.
I think that what we're seeing, and I think that this has been a huge thing that has, I think, equalized viewership for women's sports, is that I think that women's sports has done such an incredible job on character narrative.
Yes. It is like, it's amazing. I've been trying to be in these space. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get this from Together is the name of the, it's a media outlet around women's sports, around telling stories of women athletes. And it's a whole ecosystem. It's actually a really amazing space to be in. And I think about this because I think it would be cool if something similar would happen in cycling. It kind of feels like in cycling, everybody's like in their own corner, trying to stake their own claim. And it would be nice to see a little bit more of that kind of like, we're gonna lift the tide and all the boats will.
Do you think the Formula Fixed will sort of help in that regard, lifting the tide and so all the boats will rise? Like you guys have like a women's category just the same as the men's categories, right? That are racing and
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't have gendered categories.
oh,
but,
okay, rad. So it's all free for all.
It's not. We have 2 categories.
Okay.
One is called expansive. It's mostly like loosely people whose strength aligns most with men.
Okay.
And then defined, which loosely people whose strength aligns most with women. But yeah, that's been a huge part of what I've been trying to do is make sure that the defined field has got just as strong of a roster as the expansive field. And that's part of the reason that, as I've been working on this, I've been trying to make connections in the women's sports space. First of all, because I think there's so much we can learn from what they're doing. But second of all, because, I want to make sure that we've got that platform and, make sure that all of our athletes, any gender, are receiving the same amount of exposure.
I think that you guys are also in a cool kind of unique place also, where I think in a lot of other sports, the men's league just existed before the women's league does. And so now we're in a process of playing catch up, where you guys now are in this cool space where you guys are starting from page 0. And so you get to be in a place where it's like, oh, we're not playing catch up.
Also, spectator. So I think to piggyback on that too, like spectatorship has been segregated like from the beginning, right? So if you have like basketball, for example, it's separated. It's happening at different times and different places and different leagues entirely. Whereas this is not that way, right? It's like it's all spectated in the same capacity, right? And it's like one the other. So there's really like, if you're gonna watch one, you're gonna watch the other. There's really not much else to it.
Yeah. And I think that means that like instead of having to retroactively change the way that people consume sport, it is just built into the DNA of the thing that you're doing, which I think is cool because, I mean, I think we saw a lot of talk about this with the Tour de France Femme avec Swift, where it's like, well, it's like we're trying to like co-opt the essence of the tour into a women's stage race, but then like not really in any kind of genuine way, where it's like, I think that what I'm trying to say is like I think in a lot of other places, what is happening is that we are having women's sport is men's sport played by women. And I think the thing that is cool about what you guys are doing is you guys are creating women's sport as its own standalone thing. Does that make sense? I think that like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like because of the nature of this, like the catch-up kind of phenomena of like,
Well, it's just
cool with this,
all-inclusive sport at once, right?
It's all at once, where it's like, okay, well, we had the NBA, so we're gonna have the WNBA, and it's like the WNBA is like, well, it's like the NBA, but it's with women, or it's like, well, we have the Tour de France, and it's like, oh, cool, that's the Tour de France. And it's like, well, now we have the Tour de France Femme avec Swift, and it's like, oh, it's like the men's thing, but with women. And I think the thing that is so important about what you guys are doing is that it is not a, men and then also women. There is an integration built into it at its core, where instead of it's not like an also ran, it's not a, oh, well, after this event, there's this other event. It is all happening at the same time, which means that like there is no separating viewership. There is no, the success of the expansive category is linked to the success of the defined category. The success of the defined category is linked to the success of the expansive category. And there is no unwinding of that. There's no, oh, well, I want to come in and just, support the, expansive category. It's like, no, this is all one thing, which is not easy to do. I think that like a lot of other leagues have struggled to do that in a way that like feels, I mean, there's the NBA is worth $1 gazillion. I don't know, but there's so many ways now where it's like, well, the WNBA is like playing a lot of, the gap is thankfully shrinking, but it still has a long, long, long way to go.
I mean, it's more than 50 years between the founding of the two leagues.
Yeah.
And there's a really, I don't know how much you guys know about this, but just a super interesting history of like women's sport and people trying to start leagues like as far back as, the 1920s and stuff like that. And then
This is where like Title IX came into play and things like that.
Title
right?
IX was huge. So,
Yeah.
and that's like, what we're seeing now, this kind of like groundswell that kind of feels maybe like late 20-teens, like watching Megan Rapinoe at the World Cup in 2019, and just like watching it all. It's been like gathering steam and just
it's
watching it all kind of
bubbling.
explode from that point. But yeah, I mean, it's been a really long time coming, but it's also really interesting to learn the history of like the ways in which women's sport has been kept down. Like there have been times when women have proven that like there's interest, like people do want to watch women's sport, and they've basically been told like, no.
It's all about money at the end of the day, right? And so that's at least for a lot of the organizations that are putting these things on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
it's like ESPN, for example. Or
the thing is, like you need to invest, you need to make the investment, but it's like I've been learning a ton about the history of women's sport, and like women's physiology, which is so like we know very little about it. But the argument that like there's no money in it is being proven incorrect, as we can see, and there is a really kind of like interesting and disappointing history of women like showing that there is actually promise in women's athletics, like as a viable business model, but not being allowed to continue with it. But that's tangential. In terms of like for me, as I'm working on this, one thing that I think is so interesting about fixed gear racing, which is I think what you were pulling on, Max, the sport is only 15 years old. Like really the sport starts when Dave Trimble throws himself a birthday party in 2008, 2009. Yeah. So it's super interesting because we've got so many opportunities here. And it's really cool, when we're talking about like tactics of like short track, fixed gear racing, like right now it's an individual sport, but we sometimes when we talk about, like going to market with the short track racing, James was mentioning, one of the benefits of that is it is an individual sport, but then we kind of like couch that and say like, for now, who knows what's going to happen? Like, where are the athletes going to take this? It's just one of the things that's so interesting is it's like it's not a fully blank slate, but there's still a lot of question marks, and we have this like freedom to help, like write the story of this sport. And part of that, does include like making sure that women, non-binary people, like are not an afterthought. They're platformed in the same way.
I want to ask about kind of your guys' thoughts on, obviously this character development is really important, but then also like one thing that I think I've talked with a lot of folks about is just generally speaking, like what role sort of social media and media plays in anything, right? And sometimes it's whether that it's like their personal brand they're building. We talked to Lexi about that kind of thing, and he really gave us a lot of insight into like the marketing of him as a human and how, he partners with brands and how media is very important in that, social media primarily, but also what he outputs otherwise. So I'm curious, like, how you guys look at media and its role in what you're doing with, Formula Fixed.
I mean, I think James was speaking to this, but like the storytelling is something that we're trying to put at the core of everything that we're doing. So, I think we realized or just kind of like thought early on. Sorry, we realized or like thought early on. Can I adjust this?
I don't know that it extends much more.
Oh, no, I mean like further up.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. That like having a creative director was going to be super important. We're working like pretty closely with Max, the director. He's one of our advisors, but the director that James was talking about. So he's one of our advisors and also now our head of content. These things are super important because, I mean, back to the whole idea of like, at the end of the day, it's a show. Like we have characters. So leading into the showcase, we use the very scientific, James was talking about this, fixed gear ranking system.
I want to see the numbers behind it.
Yeah, let's see the algorithm.
Where am I ranked on this?
To determine who our top contenders are. So we have 8 athletes for each category. And, the bet is like, these are the people who are going to end up in the final. And, we're building little pieces around them. And the whole idea is that we're leveraging like their current fandom and our following to just start, building the hype around the whole thing. So it's really fun. It's fun for the participants. It's really fun for all of their friends to be like, oh, we just today released Cal, Mackenzie, and Jordan Ellison's videos. Mm-hmm. And it's just really funny watching people in the comments being like, oh yeah, my girl, like whatever.
Yeah. I saw Wyatt's. Wyatt's was
great,
spicy.
Right? Yeah. I think he said in the comments that he thought that was going to be in the outtakes, but
no, you're like, it's just this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, sure, we're going to come out and watch a bike race. Well, like, what are the stakes in that? Someone's going to cross the line first.
Yeah.
That's not exciting. Who's going to cross the line first? That's exciting. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
You write that down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be in a press release later.
So I think we've digested Formula Fixed pretty well at this point, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing with the whole idea and everything else that comes with it. But I guess back to kind of like the life aspect of it is, did you guys, either of you, did you ever consider the fact that you would become, I guess, an event race promoter? You sort of, this is kind of with everybody who falls into something, whether it's like athletics, professional sport, or whatever, you kind of just end up there. Was this like a career path idea for either of you guys? Like what, also do you do other things outside of this is your full-time gig? What's the shindig? Both of you guys, I guess.
Well, I'm working on this full time right now. I have been working in tech, doing design and development for a while.
This is McCoy.
Away, yeah.
This cat looks like Anne's cat. I didn't think I would be doing this. It was basically, like in 2014, 2013, I can't remember. When James wanted to throw a bike race in the parking lot, it was like, oh, my boyfriend's throwing a bike race. That sounds like fun. I like bikes.
Yeah. You're just
Wants to make the distinction. And then, I don't know, I just really liked the Fix Here community because it seemed really fun and exciting and cool. I love the way that it is always, like the demographics really reflect my reality living in California. And I think that's really cool. And it's not like typical of bike racing. But yeah, James just had this like thing where he was like, we need centralized race action and we need to tell stories. And I was like, all right, well, I can help figure that out. And now we're working on it. We'll see what happens, but it's a lot of fun.
We're gonna have to do an entire additional episode on your guys' development of your relationship and everything else.
Yeah.
from the fixed gear racing days, friends to lovers,
enemies to lovers.
Yeah.
No, so sorry. I can speak into the mic. So I don't really consider myself an event producer or organizer.
Yeah, I guess
like
how
that,
would you
right?
describe yourself?
I mean, I don't really think about it like that, right? Like the reason that I put on Mission Crit is because I wanted to race in a fixed gear race, right? Like the reason that I'm doing these go-kart track races is because I think
to watch.
it'd be cool to do for me.
Yeah.
Right. Like fortunately other people seem to like them too. So like what we're building is, earlier I said like I've got like this splinter in my brain that I just can't get out. It's like I believe that something like this needs to exist and nobody else is doing it. So I'm like, oh, fuck, I've got to do it.
Have you always had that thing with other things in life, or is this like specifically related to the cycling aspect of?
I mean,
so is that a personality trait?
Have you, well, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had like a moment in your life where just sort of like the clouds part and you can see something or like the future just so clearly, like you're, oh my God, I see it.
Many times, yeah.
So that's what this is like, right? Like I get it. I see it. Like I can see the future for this. And I feel like a crazy person talking about this, like this is the future and other people are like, oh, whatever. Gravel's the future. But like I see it, I get it. And maybe I'm not going to do it, but the reason that I'm here is because nobody else has done it. And I'm like, well, why not me?
At the
Why
very
not Clare?
least, it's a stepping stone position that you're in, right?
Well,
You're
sort of.
contributing to the overall forward motion of the thing that you want to see happen.
Yeah. When you put it like that, right? Like I want to do this long term, right? Like I don't want to invite negative comparisons, but I want to be like the Vince McMahon of cycling.
Cool. That's a good one. I want to be the Vince McMahon of anything.
I mean, minus the steroids
And the cocaine abuse
and
and the
other things.
Yeah, he's got to have.
That's why I said not the negative comparisons, but like he took this league, this thing, and then he figured out how to make it successful, this fledgling thing, and turned it into a household name. And then he made himself part of the story, right? Like I think that's really compelling. Like I don't necessarily need to be part of the story, but I'm certainly central to
What do you
telling it.
What do you think you need from the cycling community for this to be fully successful?
God, that's a really good question. What do we think we need from the cycling community?
I mean, we need support, but like I hear a lot of people talking about the need for, people talk all the time about the need for like a centralized league. So yeah, support from the cycling community. I think open minds. Something that we're really trying to do is make sure that anybody who rides a bike knows that they're welcome.
Open-mindedness is such a tough thing in the sport of cycling in particular. I think, you even see it when you go to your first group ride or something. There's like, this is how you ride your bike. This is how you need to do this. This is how you need to do that. And it's, obviously some of this etiquette and things are like safety related, whatever, I get it. But in the long run too, it's like your kit needs to be this color. Well, everybody's going towards black frame sets. And it's like, dude, like what? Like, get a little loud, do it a little different, like have your own flavor to it. Yeah. So I guess anyway.
Yeah. I think it's like a cultural buy-in almost, where it's like, hey, you're going to walk in, you're going to suspend what you think this is all about and kind of just like see if this makes you feel something.
I think encouraging, so something that Dante was talking a lot about this, but like a lot of people in cycling want to see, they're centering their own like athletic journey. And that's obviously very important to people. But what we're trying to do is provide a spectator experience. So yeah, for cyclists who might, they might even be really competitive in their discipline. It doesn't happen to be fixed gear racing, but just encouraging them to like come out and check it out, because it's a really fun, super colorful community. The formats are explosive. They're so exciting to watch, and especially in this, this format where the race action is centralized. So you're not like, like Peloton goes by, 45 seconds later, they're around some buildings and then they come back and you've like missed everything basically. Everything's going to be right there in front of you.
I can't wait for something very specific to happen here. And we kind of touched on it earlier about revolutionizing a sport. And then Max and I were kind of talking about this the other day, because I was like, couldn't you just build up your track, like any track bike, and jump out there and rip it? And he's like, dude, they make bikes now that have higher bottom brackets, super short crank legs, all this stuff. I'm really curious to see what happens to the technology in the bike realm when people like state get involved, or whoever it is, right? That is like, we need to build a bike that is a kart track style, tight fixed corner racing bike. Like that I'm so excited for the technology developments that come from this.
It's another part of like writing the story of a new sport that is really exciting. We actually talked to a frame manufacturer yesterday.
Cool.
Can you tell us who they are?
Is it not?
I don't want to say who they are. It's really exciting. It was definitely a like very early days conversation. But
James is gonna rat it out, but
do not.
Yeah,
we can talk offline.
Oh yeah.
Well, you didn't tell me who was making them. You just were telling me who was.
We can talk offline
We'll
on
talk
that
about
if you
this.
don't want to drop the.
Hey,
Yeah,
if you're
do it
watching at
later.
home, sorry. There's some top secret
Yeah.
stuff going on here.
Well, no, I think that's so. Wow, we haven't talked about so much. I know we've talked about so much, but
we're
like
scratching the surface. We're gonna have to do a follow up for sure.
So one of our top competitors, Frank Martucci, has a bike that's custom built. It's got a higher bottom bracket, and I'm sure he's running shorter cranks, but he's also running 650B wheels.
I saw that.
So he's within the specs of the rules, because you need drop bar, no brakes, you need foot retention, but it doesn't say anything about like wheel size or whatever. So like fat tires, smaller wheels, lower center of gravity, right? Like he's really sort of figuring it out. I think that though, like when we progress in this, there's going to be a lot for people to dive into. Like we touched on Formula One. When we start, it's going to be, who's left? Like the last person to cross the line telling their story. Like that's compelling. But as we move forward and we're able to like incorporate new technology, like, we'll have sensors on the bikes that show like the velocity and the lean angle and the power output.
Like on MotoGP kind of.
Exactly,
Yeah,
right? So you have like
incorporating
more
data.
depth for people like nerds like Max to dig into, so that they're like really super into it. So one of the things that Claire likes to talk about a lot is the potential for gamification of this format of cycling. So not only in like making a video game, but actually like, did either of you see the NBA 3-point contest at the All-Star game? Did you see how they played on the big LED screen? Like, what if when we move to the stadium, they race on an LED screen? It could literally be Mario Kart. Like as a rider, if a rider attacks, like flames shoot out, or like there's power-ups on the course, or like, crazy stuff like that. Like, why not?
We saw this with
It's like Tron.
but like Formula E racing, the like electric car Formula racing. They have stuff like this too, where there's like, oh well, you have to go through this gate and then you get an extra DRS at this lap or something like that. But it's like, yeah, you could. There's no reason you couldn't.
No, and we're talking about entertainment. And, like, I think one of our biggest learnings is if you look at the legacy major league sports like the NBA or the NFL, Major League Baseball's average fan age is, I think, like 58 years old.
Wow.
They're
Sounds
not
right.
getting any younger. So like growing up, as I mentioned, I played baseball, and I always viewed these sports as like these monoliths, forever unchanging. But they realize that they need to meet the fans where they are instead of expecting people to come to them. So you may have noticed things in baseball. They incorporated the timer, the pitch clock.
The game is so much faster. I went to like a 2.5 hour game the other night.
More compelling. You're like, what? I basically just sat down. I've only had 4 beers.
Cut off at the 7th inning already.
Second base is larger to incorporate more steals, more action, higher runs, right? Basketball has an in-season tournament now, like soccer. And it's to, like reach a younger audience and like
Sensationalize.
create more stuff, right? Like, so why not? Like, why not make it a video game? We talk about it so much, but like, I don't know. I think the possibility is there. The potential's there. It just needs, like, we're taking a huge swing, and it's definitely not like anything that's come before. I don't know.
Well, yeah, from the cycling community,
Yeah. Oh,
just an open mind.
open mind.
Even if you're not going to race, consider coming out to watch or like watching the live stream. It's going to be really entertaining. We've got a slate of.
What's the date of the first one up in LA again? I think we might miss it by the time we drop this, but
we're doing a showcase event on October 11th.
yeah.
It's going to be qualifiers through the afternoon, and then a final circuit from 8 to 10 p.m. And that's going to be the thing that people will want to show up and
that's on the 11th.
and spectate.
Okay.
October 11th. Yeah.
Can I gamble on this?
Legally?
Actually,
How do
we
we-
do. So
how do we- yeah.
Underdog Betting is one of our sponsors.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's kind of a test for them. But yes, it has been called out many times that this format is going to be a really fun one to gamble on. Actually, we've seen enough people in the top contenders posts. We did like a compilation post, and everybody, or enough people were commenting like $50 on Alex, Alec, $50
Yeah.
on Frank.
We need DraftKings. We need Bovada.
Yeah.
I mean, Kieran is an $11 billion.
I was going to say
Yeah.
Kieran's a great example of this.
I feel like that is, as like degenerate as this sounds, if you want to get into the hearts and minds of millions of Americans, gambling.
Call 1-800. I don't know the number.
I had a buddy
It's good
that
marketing too.
it's great marketing. And I have friends who I'd like wake up in the middle of the night and they're watching like women's third tier Korean soccer. I'm like, why are you watching this? He's like, I have $50 on this team winning. And I'm like,
to hit an 8-leg parlay.
no shit. All right, let's sit down. What are we watching? And it's as silly as that sounds, like there is a huge group of people that now really like sports gambling, and now that it's, I think, legal
No, in California. It's been on the ballot.
in
Yeah.
certain
it's-
states. Yeah.
Get in there.
There's a place for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole conversation, right? Like, we've certainly weighed the pros and the cons of bringing in gambling into cycling, and it's a lot of attention, but there are definitely some downsides,
Yeah, of course.
and like some real risks. Like you hear about athletes, families, officials being threatened in other sports.
yeah.
I don't know. we've got a good team and like we work with good people. So I am confident we could figure out a way to like do something.
Safely. Yeah.
You know, that's the hope, right? Like we do the best we can.
It's also hard because I mean, like you even saw this. Who is the guy in the NBA who got, I think, thrown out of the NBA for
Betting on his own
sports
games.
gambling on himself?
Raptors.
He was on the Raptors, yeah. Where he like threw away a $50 million contract for sports gambling. And it's like, dude.
Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame because he bet on himself. And now, we lived in Canada for a year over the pandemic. And when I came back, I caught a game on the TV. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it that they were promoting gambling of the game.
Like DraftKings is
Like
advertising.
insane, like absolutely insane. I was like, this is just, I was stunned because they banned him for life.
Yeah.
And he's not in the Hall of Fame, even though he is a Hall of Fame player for betting on himself.
Yeah. And so it's like, if people are willing to throw away $50 million Raptors contracts over sports gambling, who knows, you know?
Yeah.
So it definitely is like, bringing, all jokes aside, like I think that degenerate sports gambling is a way to draw a fan base. Is it the fan base you want?
But I think like maybe to like take what you're saying, there's a lot of potential to like open this up, you know, because like there's so much that is appealing about cycling that we get, you know, cycling is a sport that we all understand. But I think that if formatted in the right way, you know, hopefully that's the way that we're doing it. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's somebody else who comes after us. I think there's a way to crack open cycling in the United States because it's just such a massive market. And, you know, sports is a huge pie and there's more than enough room for this, right? Like even if it's not the next NBA, you know, there's still a very real chance of being a success of, you know, creating a lot of value, not only for like the teams and the team owners or the league or whatever, but like for the players. Can you imagine if your friends who are like the elite cyclists in the country were getting paid, like Dante was talking about, like getting paid $300,000 a year, like they get paid to ride their bikes. Like, I don't think that's out of the question. I think that that's a very real thing that can and will be happening very soon.
Yeah.
And Claire wants to say something.
Yeah, I think if there's any group of folks to do it, it's you two. I mean, I really think that, like, you know, just based on your connectedness in the industry and the individuals that you have access to and that you have worked with in the past on different things and ventures, it seems like you guys are really, really integrated in the community itself too. And you also are individuals that have the community's best interest at mind as, you know, cyclists yourselves, right? And like people who ride bikes. And I think that that's extremely important when it comes from outside. It's a different type of approach, right? So I think it's really important that you guys are internal to the sport and the community in the first place, and that you're utilizing the resources that you built over countless times, and, you know, a ton of time. And also, like, you wouldn't have the rapport if you weren't doing good for the community, as the community is very quick to cast people aside too when they screw the community over.
We saw that with the NCL, right? Like,
yeah, and
there's
so
a lot of persona non gratas, and I think that, like, the fact that you have had this longevity in this space that you're in speaks to the fact that you're doing what you're doing, right? I think the thing that is also like is I think you guys are coming in at a good time where, you know, we saw USA crits fall on their face. We saw the NCL fall on our face. And I think that now it's like we are all sitting here and we're like,
just good stewards of the
we
sport.
want
Please
the
step
next
up.
people we want the next people who come up to be doing things right for the right reasons with the right people. And I think that it's like, you know, USA crits, you had the guy who was the head of USA crits doing all the stuff. I don't want to get into details because if I get it wrong, we're going to get, but it's like all of the stuff that he was doing. And then like the NCL felt like a money grab. And I think that it's like having people like you two who are coming in here who seem genuine and like you guys care about people and the sport and is refreshing. It's so refreshing to see.
Thank you. That's like really appreciated. And I will say that I will say that we what's the phrase? Imminent financial ruin. we are personally like, if this doesn't go,
Heavy
it's like,
investors.
Yes.
Yes.
So like we are putting our asses on the line for this.
Well, you're
like
putting your money where your mouth is.
in a big way. So if it doesn't work out, I'll need a job.
Cycling community can support with.
There you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was a really good observation, and thank you for the kind words. We try, and like I said earlier, like it's an honor and like like to have that trust placed in us. And I think I wanted to touch briefly on something you said. Like I think because we've never been huge, right? Like when we were doing Mission Crit, we were always number 2 to Red Hook, and like we're not the first event or something that people talk about, but we're like doing a good job and we're doing it consistently. And we're like going to sneak up on people. Like it's my hope that we find success and people are like, where did they come from? They just came out of nowhere. And it's like that 10-year overnight success story.
Yeah.
But I like it that we're still operating. And I think that one thing that I've learned is that, really early on when Claire and I were starting, I was really hesitant to tell anybody about my ideas because I was afraid that somebody was going to steal it. Like, because putting a bike race in a stadium is not a novel idea, right? Yeah. Like, it just takes a lot of work. But I think what I found is that
people are so unwilling to do that kind of work.
It's just, they're apathetic. They don't care. They don't wish us harm. Like, they're not going to steal the idea. They just don't care. And so like, I think it's going to be a big job for us to make people care.
I was also listening to this thing the other day that essentially one of the individuals was alluding to the fact that in a world where like everybody is just like trending towards ordinary, it is very easy to stand out and be extraordinary. And all you have to do is like say your big ideas out loud and be a little bit different and unusual and challenge the status quo of what has been done forever and ever. Everybody so badly, it's like tall poppy syndrome in some way. They want to like, stay down so that they don't get seen or heard or stand out and or seen as abnormal. And in a world where so many people are, trending towards normal in a lot of ways, it's never been easier to, be a little loud.
Yeah. Another analogy is like the crabs in a bucket, right? Like all the other crabs pull it down, but nobody questions why the crabs are in the bucket in the first place.
There was an actual experiment they did. This is crazy, and this is a tangent, but there's an experiment they did. I think they put chimpanzees in a room or something like that, and they put like a banana or whatever it was at the top of the room, and there was like 5 chimps in the room, and there was like a chimp. Then they were like working out ways to get to the banana. Well, they conditioned all of these like 5 chimps that were originally in the room to not go for the banana by like spraying them with a water hose or something every time they tried it, right? Well, eventually the chimps stopped climbing to get the banana. Well, then they phased out a couple of the chimps, right? Well, then a couple new chimps are like, dude, there's a banana up there. They tried to go get the banana. Well, the other chimps pulled them down and were like, hey, you can't do that because you're going to get hit with the water hose or whatever it was that was happening in the experiment, right? By the end of it, they had phased out all of the original chimps that were in the room. Not any of them knew why they were doing the thing they were doing, but they were no longer chasing the banana. And they would all like tell each other, don't chase the banana. Which is like a crazy scientific experiment they did about like the behavior of, animals, humans, whatever. It's the same thing, right? It's like people so often want to tell you like, oh, don't do this, don't do that, whatever it is. But like, some people, if you're just like, dude, I'm going to get the banana and you do it anyway, regardless of the potential failure.
I think one of the things I think about a lot is that how strong of a motivator spite is. Like I know personally that works for me. Like when I was growing up playing baseball, I had I was never the best, but I was always the hardest worker. And I had a particular coach who was the dad of a fellow player who for some reason just didn't like me and would tell me that I wasn't very good. And so like, I was like, I'm going to show you. And like, I wasn't a professional, but like I did pretty well. And, I don't think anybody's saying that we can't do this other than the fact that we just need a shit ton of money.
People are just, and
But you're taking risk, which is very important.
I mean, it makes sense. Like people are just kind of like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. And that makes sense. I mean, especially, seeing what happened with the NCL last year, like lots of big promises. Unfortunately, their approach did not land.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it makes sense that we're just gonna have to keep working on it and try and show them that we can do it.
Well, I think that we definitely need a follow-up episode to this one where we can talk about things as they develop. So I think in the meantime, let's plug where everybody that's listening can find, Formula Fixed. Is this like you guys want to throw the Instagram out there, website? This is your opportunity.
This is your time to plug anything you want.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah, you can thank anyone you want. Claire, you start.
Okay, so I am actually going to thank a sponsor. Part of the reason we're able to do this is because we are sponsored by Kraft Heinz, which is pretty cool. And I don't know when this episode is going to drop, but one of our activations is in partnership with them. So it's really easy. People can just, if you're on a ride, go to a restaurant. If the restaurant has Heinz products, take a picture of like the ketchup bottle with the menu from the restaurant and upload that picture as part of your ride. And then if you post it on the Formula Fix group page, you will get a code where you can possibly win a custom painted frame that's painted by Dr. Curtis Bullock, AKA at Save the Postal Service. So There's also some other fun prizes like actual Heinz IP on, a set of like ketchup, mustard, relish water bottles.
Very
Just
cool.
like fun little things. But yeah, it sounds like this episode is going to drop after the race has happened. If it drops before.
Yeah, October 11th is like a week and a half out.
No, it's 2.5 weeks.
We
Don't
might
say
be able to get it in there. We'll see what's
We might
up.
sneak it in.
Yeah. The event though is going to be October 11th, as we mentioned. We're on Instagram at Formula Fixed. We're on everywhere at Formula Fixed, although we're only posting on Instagram right now. And if this does drop before the race happens, we're going to be putting out a live stream, which is going to feature Brad Soner as the anchor. Veronica Volak is our analyst, and then Nico Deportago Cabrera, our sideline reporter. We'll be putting that out through our YouTube.
Very cool.
That's what I got.
Okay, so if we do drop this before, I want to tell everybody to go subscribe to your guys' YouTube channel. How many subs do you have?
Oh, handful.
At least 5.
Yeah.
All right. So one of the constraints are like live streaming, I think is like 1,000 depending on where you're live streaming from and what you're doing. So as long as,
Said that that's not the case.
okay, then they may have adjusted it to like,
That's what I thought.
okay. Yeah, it used to be that way for me when I was first starting YouTube, and I was trying to do POV. We can talk about it offline. But I was trying to do point of view live streaming, and it was a whole thing. So
Terry B is also going to be coming out and capturing, and he'll be broadcasting the qualifiers through his channel. So that's
Cool.
pretty fun. But we're also selling spectator tickets. They're only $10, but it's going to be pretty awesome. We have a hazer. We have a hazer and spotlights.
machine.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I was
Yeah,
like a
fog
hazer,
machine.
like someone that
Yeah.
What is this? I was
someone
like,
comes in and hazes you.
yeah, I was like, I'm about to get hate.
That's just the kids outside.
Yeah.
This happened in reverse when they were talking about it. I was like, "What's a hazer?" And they were like, "Fog machine." So now I'm using the correct terms, but
It's the industry lingo.
yeah.
I'm not an inside guy. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I was one of those guys who's a big deal.
It's fun working with like media production teams.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, it looks great. This is exciting. We're gonna have cameras.
James, what do you got for us? You want to add to this?
Yeah, who are you thinking?
Yeah, do you guys have the hookup on mustard, by the way?
Oh,
I'm
thank
running a little
God.
low in the fridge, but yeah, go ahead.
No, I have to buy it like everybody else. Although I did just get my son really loves I just got a pickle flavored ketchup.
Oh, dude.
So you don't even need to buy extra pickles or relish. No, I want to thank Claire, who has done an amazing job. Like we wouldn't be here without her effort. It's been a struggle for the last year. It's been very hard, but Claire's been doing a really tremendous job. Like she does everything, like even the rider wrangling. Like she's reached out to every single rider who's participating, which is 96. And like, just imagine trying to wrangle 96 cyclists,
Yeah,
like
that's
fixed gear cyclists.
What a nightmare.
On top of everything else. So it's like, and being a mom and like going to conferences and networking and everything like that. So she's been a superhero. Yeah, our sponsors are great. I want to thank you guys for giving us the platform to do this. This is like super fun. I'm sorry I did so much rambling. One of my
Rambling's
goals
good
that
for
I
the
didn't tell you
soul.
about is I want it to be the longest episode that you've done so far.
Are you longer than Dante?
He was 2 hours, 21 minutes.
Ooh,
And where are we at?
we're pretty damn close.
2 hours, 25 minutes.
Well, there's a little bit. There's
Hell
a little bit
yeah,
buffer
I mean,
on the
if you-
front end, but
yeah, if you chop out the middle where I was just talking nonsense, it might be on par. No, I think this is great. And I know you're not going to be there, Max, but
I'm gonna come watch.
Love
at
to
the
have
very
you out.
least.
Well, I
I'll be
am-
up there. Yeah, yeah. Let's
Well, now
the
that
10th.
it's now I'm just not going to be there the 10th. Now that it's on the 11th,
It's
I will.
on Friday the 11th at K1 Speed in Burbank, California.
I will be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and Dalton are going to come.
I'll come haze people.
We'll be the hazers.
What's that?
Who's racing in case it does go up in time?
Oh my God. We
Headliners.
we got Alec Briggs coming over from London, Frank Martucci, Wyatt. I need the list. There's so many people.
Wyatt Funk.
Melissa Martucci, who is just amazing.
Danny Morsehead.
Danny Morsehead.
Chelsea Wolf.
Chelsea Wolf, who is a
Maxer.
She's down here, isn't she?
she is done.
Yeah. Yeah, and we haven't released these yet, but we have some wild cards. Dante's actually going to come out and race, and we just picked up Lucas Bourgogne and Luke Fetzer. Right?
Yeah, the
Exciting.
dynamic duo.
Pretty
Are they gonna have
cool.
crit shit corner over your guys'?
I think they're fun.
They're
also
fantastic. I love them to death.
Very
Yeah.
communicative,
Good kids.
also, which is great because some of the riders, it's like, can I please have your picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then on the women's side, Isabel Branton is one of our wild
Oh,
cards.
is she coming?
She is, yeah. And we've also got, I don't know if you guys have heard of Ayanna Taylor. She's out in St. Petersburg, Florida. And so she's, I think she's pretty new to bike racing. She's just been like doing serious podiums she's been flying up to like the tri-state area a lot. She's amazing though. Like, and her online presence is just so compelling. She's hilarious.
What's
and
her
she's
at?
also, it's at A1 ANCE, I want to say. I'll send it to you.
Oh, yeah. She works with these guys a bunch,
Oh, okay.
I think. I think if I'm thinking of the same person.
Maybe.
That's awesome.
Not sure. But
So
yeah.
they're
Oh,
just the
yeah.
people.
Also on the women's side, Brittany O'Neill, who's been like on the top of every podium for the fixed gear circuit on the East Coast.
This is the who's
summer.
who of fixie
Yeah.
crits.
She races
Who
for
at 50
Affinity, right?
crits? Yeah.
Oh, Weiss.
Oh, yeah, Weiss. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah.
Who else? Iman Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. He is. He's really nice.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, just had to lay down those names in case this goes out ahead of time, so we can get
The hype.
butts and seats. Yeah.
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 Awesome.
Well, thank you guys for coming on. We appreciate it. And yeah, I think we can probably make this thing come out before then. So we'll do what we can.
Yeah, we'll have to have a full
Everybody-
media calendar, but this is coming out
Everybody-
before Formula Fixed.
Go to the event. Let's sell it out. How many people can you fit?
FormulaFix.com.
Yeah, what is sold out?
Get tickets.
Uh,
We only have 300 tickets for sale.
That's
Well,
it.
I've already bought 298
Okay. Do
of
I
them,
get
so-
one?
there you go.
All right, cool. I'll go on there right now and buy one. But all right.
It's going to sell out though.
Yeah, okay. As long as it does. Yeah, it's gonna sell out. You guys better get your tickets now. So
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you guys so much.
yeah, appreciate
Here,
it.
this
All right,
is
give
the
it a clap.
final. This is the final clap.
Give me the clap.